The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com.
Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242 or visit tomsbeets.com.
In these times of great peril, we've got Kim Jong-un calling Donald Trump a crazy old man, and Donald Trump calling Kim whatever he's calling him. And
There's a terrible hurricane hitting Puerto Rico today. There are no doubt going to be many people dead, tragically. Massive destruction. It's running across the Caribbean. And, I spent some time this morning watching and listening to the coverage of this storm on a couple of different networks. And I didn't hear anything about how the Bush administration wants to defund, actually already has defunded our new weather satellites. In fact, there's a whole set of new weather satellites that were being put together. Excuse me, the Trump administration. What did I say? The Trump administration wants to do this, and there were like a couple of satellites that were like, one of them was already built, and the Trump administration ordered the thing destroyed. I mean, shredded, or whatever you do with a satellite. Because, it wasn't that they didn't want to spend the money on shooting the thing into outer space. That money was already appropriated. It was that they didn't want the weather information because it proves global warming. And as a result, we're going to have less accurate prediction of when and where hurricanes are going to hit us. I mean, this is how insane these people are. But the media is afraid to call them out for that, because the minute that they come right out and say, these people are nuts, or they are totally lying to all of us because they're taking all this money from the fossil fuel industry. The minute any reporter says that will be the last minute that reporter ever gets a Republican to come on their show. And that's the power, that the Republican Party holds over the media. And not only that, of course, the minute any reporter for any major television networks, commercial television networks, says that, that's going to be the instance the BP and Koch Industries and all these other companies, these other Massey Energy, the fossil fuel companies start saying, hey, I think we'll just pull our ads from the television network. And the network will lose millions of dollars because some commentator, in a slip of the tongue, told the truth. That's how screwed up our media landscape is in the United States, and why this right here, Free Speech TV, is so vitally important. I want to thank you for your response yesterday. Last week we were getting like $1,000 days, $2,000 days. I think our top day was almost a little short of $3,000. We really need to hit $10,000 every day, and in order to make our goal, if we're going to do this over 3 weeks, and so we're like way behind. And yesterday we raised almost $11,000. That was great. A lot of people, calling up with small gifts, $20, $30, $50. What does it cost to go to a restaurant these days? And you just take one night and say, tonight, instead of going to the restaurant, I'm going to keep Free Speech TV on the air. And, for some of us, that'll be $30. And so for some of us, it'll be $80. Or, for some of us, it'll be $10 at McDonald's or whatever. Whatever it is, when enough people do it, and there are a lot of people watching this program right now, it adds up. So today, we need to hit that, and exceed, frankly. It would be great to have a $13,000 or $14,000 day, but at the very least, another $10,000 day. So If you have not yet called, 877-378-8669, a major contribution to Free Speech TV, joined Free Speech TV, become a member of Free Speech TV, become part of this family, please do so now. 877-378-8669, or you can do it online at freespeech.org. With an $80 contribution, you get a Free Speech TV water bottle and the Stamp Stampede stamp from Ben Cohen of Ben and Jerry's. That Ben was last Monday. He showed us, on the program, and it's a really cool little self-inking stamper, but it's all filled out with anti-big pharma stuff. That's with the $80 gift. With a $120 gift, you get that. You get the water bottle and the pharma stamp. Plus, you get a copy of Mike Papantonio's new novel, and this is literally just out. I mean, they're just shipping them from Amazon right now, and other booksellers. You get Mike Papantonio's book, Law and Vengeance. Great novel. It's a legal thriller. With a $240 gift, or $20 a month for a year, you get that, Papantonio's book, plus Milton Mayer's book, They Thought They Were Free, the book about, Germany. You've heard me describe these before. With a $360 gift, or $30 a month, you get Mike Papantonio's book, Milton Mayer's book, They Thought They Were Free, plus an autographed copy of my book, Unequal Protection, which is the book about corporate personhood. And if you ever want the details on corporate personhood, or you want to have discuss it with somebody, or just, you have somebody who you think might be interested, this makes a great gift, a birthday gift, a holiday gift, Christmas gift, whatever. With a $480 gift, you get all of those books, the, Pap's and Milton Mayer's and mine, plus Democracy in Chains by Nancy McLean, which is an absolutely brilliant book about how the right-wing billionaires have taken over our country and what we can do about it. It's actually in some ways even an optimistic book. With a $1,000 gift, we can meet in Portland, Oregon, or Washington, D.C. And
this is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you, and it's Friday, but and very often Congressman Pocan is with us on Wednesday, but Friday's just as good, and it's midday, so it's midday with Mark. Congressman Mark Pocan on the line with us, representing the 2nd District of Wisconsin. Of course, he's the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. One of the top 2 progressives in Congress here and in that caucus. And pocan.house.gov is the website. You can tweet him at Rep, R-E-P, Mark Pocan. He will be with us for the hour taking your calls. So if you have a question for Congressman Pocan, give him a shout now. Congressman, welcome back.
Thank you, Tom. Really glad to be here today.
Great to have you with us. I'm broadcasting live from Portland, Oregon. Where are you today?
I'm in Madison, Wisconsin, but if I couldn't be on Wednesday. I want to apologize because I was in western Massachusetts. I did a town hall with Jim McGovern in Northampton on Tuesday night. Hundreds of people showed up, and I got to tell you, Tom, you have a lot of listeners in western Massachusetts. People brought it up over and over as we had conversations throughout the evening.
Oh, that's great to know. That's great. So there's a lot going on in Congress right now, or a lot going on in general, that I'm just really curious to hear your thoughts on. Kim Jong-un calling Donald Trump basically dotard, I think is the word. It's kind of an anachronistic English word, but means basically senile old man. And but he explicitly threatened fire against the United States. Trump is threatening to destroy North Korea. You've got Jimmy Carter coming out and saying this is crazy. If I were president, I would fly over to North Korea and meet with this guy and let's work this thing out. All he wants us to say is that we're not going to attack him unless he attacks us first, that this is all purely defensive on both sides. I'm curious your thoughts on that. I'm curious your thoughts on what's going on with this so-called, Graham Cassidy, Johnson, whatever bill, this so-called repeal of Obamacare. It looks like it's going to be insanely destructive. And I've had a number of people call into this program over the days that we've been talking about it, saying that they have not been having problems getting through to their Republican members of the Senate, and which was not the case previously. They were slammed, but they're apparently not right now. And I'm thinking maybe this has to do with crappy coverage on the part of our media or something. But how real is this? What are your thoughts on that? And what else is going on?
Yeah, so let me start with the healthcare bill, because I think it is very much a real proposal. I think they were doing this stealthily and planning this for a while. It's their last attempt. It's this Graham, Cassidy, Heller, Johnson bill, which essentially gets rid of the Affordable Care Act, but doesn't provide a replacement. I mean, it's going to block grant money to states, but only until 2026, and then there's a cliff, and then there's nothing. It cuts Medicaid. It allows states to do things like get rid of things like requirements to cover people with pre-existing conditions and the other essential health benefits. And you're going to see people, if you have a heart condition, your insurance will likely go up $50,000 a year under this proposal. I think it's been estimated that 1 in 2 people might be living in states where they'll have these weakened provisions. And a place like Wisconsin with Scott Walker, I think he was, if not the first, one of the first governors in the country previously to say he would consider getting rid of pre-existing conditions as a requirement, and then he kind of realized that was a pretty bad, dumb thing to say, and he tried to then give a non-answer. Well, this is real. This is going to the Senate. It has to be done by September 30th in order to avoid the 60-vote rule, to use this reconciliation process to get 50 votes, and then it could go to the House, and it could be law by this time potentially next week. So I agree. I've tried to Google this to even find out what this is about, because they're not waiting for a Congressional Budget Office score, which is pretty much unheard of on something this big. And it's hard to even find stories because it's complicated. I had a press conference yesterday here, and one reporter wrote the story up, and they referred to, instead of that we were going to have block grants going to states, they said that he was blocking grants going to states. And they said $32 million could be lost. No, it's 32 million people could lose their coverage, but we don't know because they're not going to wait for a CBO score. So I'm really worried that this was a plan for quite a while, and that they're now executing their plan to take away health insurance.
I'm continually confounded by the arcane rules in the Senate. And I remember, Bernie was doing this show when he had been in the House for years, and when he moved over to the Senate, in the first year or so that he was on, people would call with Senate rules questions, and he would say, I'm still trying to figure this stuff out. It's apparently quite different from the rules that you guys have in the House. But I thought, and apparently I'm completely wrong on this, I thought that if you're going to pass a piece of legislation using reconciliation, that the Byrd Amendment rules for reconciliation, use of reconciliation, require that you demonstrate that you're not going to raise the budget deficit after a decade or within a decade or both. And I thought that required a CBO score. Are they getting around this by saying at the end of 10 years everything goes to zero? So obviously it's not going to add to the deficit. We're just going to end Medicaid. Is that what's going on? Or are they going to slip in a CBO score after it goes through reconciliation with the House, or what?
Your guess is as good as mine, Tom. That's the problem with this. The fact that they're not going to do a CBO score, that's pretty much unheard of, right? So we don't really know what we're voting on. Senator Johnson from Wisconsin was on Morning Joe earlier this week, and when they asked him questions, it was very clear he doesn't know what's in his bill, or he doesn't want people to know what's in his bill. Either way, I find it problematic that he's either ignorant of the bill or deceitful about the bill. But this is the process they're going on because they're so desperate to get this done, because they still need to get this done so they can move on to tax reform. And, I think people need to really be calling and, going to rallies and doing whatever on this. I think this is really real. I think it was very strategically held quiet. I think they had this bipartisan compromise with Lamar Alexander and Patty Murray going on, and all of a sudden it stopped. And when this started, I think this might have been a plan for quite a while, and that means they've got a little advantage on their side. We need to get ready and speak out really hard.
Yeah, absolutely. It's time to be calling Congress. We just have about a minute and a half before we're going to hit a break here, Congressman. What else is going on in Congress that people should be A, aware of, or B, calling their members of Congress and citizen lobbying on?
Sure. I think two things, if I can mention. One, DACA still. I think we need to, October 5th is the new date again for signing in up for the program. We need to make sure that we're getting this done by October 5th. So Democrats are very, very invested in getting this done. And then second one that doesn't get a lot of coverage, but, Perkins student loans expires on September 30th, and it might, continue for a while without resolution. But, there's a bipartisan bill I'm working on right now with Representative Stefanik from New York. We have over 200 co-sponsors in the House. But, if this doesn't happen, a lot of people are going to lose access to financial aid that otherwise, may not be able to go to college without it. I'm one of those people. That's why I watch these issues really close. If it wasn't for grants and loans, I never could have gone to college. I worked throughout. I never did a spring break. And I get really nervous about programs like this. So Perkins Loans is another thing that hasn't gotten attention, but we need to be calling our members of Congress on.
Is that a program that requires that requires congressional reauthorization for funding? Is that what it is, or even the entire program itself?
Yeah, it's the reauthorization because 2 years ago we did a reauthorization, and Lamar Alexander held it up in the Senate for a few months, and we lost the ability to give loans to grad students. So we still have it for undergrad students, but if they keep at the pace they've been going, this is a program that could go away, and it's extremely important to anyone who's smart enough and capable enough to go to higher education but can't afford it. We need to keep this program in place.
Yeah, remarkable. It's just, what the Republicans are up to and how nakedly they're just pandering to the interests of the billionaire class and just dumping on working people is just mind-boggling. Congressman Mark Pocan, Midday with Mark, taking your calls right after this.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be right back with your calls for Congressman Pocan. And welcome back. Horace in High Point, North Carolina. You are on the air. Thanks for watching Free Speech TV. You're on the air with Congressman Mark Pocan.
I have two things to say. I don't know if this is correct or not, but I think that the Democrats can get on the floor and speak for a certain amount of hours and to prolong it until the time runs out. And also, if they're trying to promote a bill this egregious, why aren't they taking the same health care that they're trying to offer to the majority of the people? Thank you for listening to my comment.
Yeah, thank you, Horace. So on the first question, I'm going to give, I think, Bernie's old answer. I'm not entirely familiar with all the rules of the Senate and whether or not there is an ability to. I haven't seen much of that in the news, and I think that would have been mentioned if it was a possibility, but I'm sorry I can't answer that. To the second question, currently, and a lot of people don't know this, the only people required by law to have coverage under the Affordable Care Act are members of Congress. So we're all in that plan, which is a really good plan, and I'm very happy about the coverage I have. For them, let's remember, over half of Congress are millionaires. The typical cost of what health insurance might be isn't going to mean as much to many of them. So I think they look at it differently. And since so many people really don't represent their constituents, they represent the special interests far more effectively. That's what they're doing in this case. And, we saw the Koch brothers supposedly recently. There's some comments that it sounds like they are really trying to push this and make sure it gets done. That's the people that they're dancing to their tune rather than their actual constituents. So I think the question I would have, Horace, is if this is such a great idea, where is their press conferences nationally with patients and doctors and hospital professionals all saying this is a great way to expand and cover people in America? No one can do that. It's the complete opposite, and that should tell you how bad their bill is.
Yeah, yesterday, we have about a minute and 15 seconds before the break here. Yesterday, I on this program, I read the list of physicians agencies that are opposed to this. The American Hospital Association, the I don't recall if it was the AMA specifically. I think it was the AMA Action Fund, AARP. I don't know of any group that's not a right-wing ideologue group. We had a guy on yesterday who was one of these right-wing alternatives for the AARP kind of groups, but it's really not a AARP group. It's just really right-wing propaganda aimed at people over 50. Do you know of any actual legitimate medical groups that are supportive of Graham Cassidy?
No, exactly. I don't. In fact, even insurance companies are against this because they see what's going to happen. You go back to the bad old days, and that didn't work especially well for them either. So this is a complete solution without anyone actually proposing it who works in the industry. This is just the Republicans to get rid of the Obamacare and to start tax reform for their wealthy benefactors.
Yeah, and the tax reform aspect of this is not being discussed in the media at all. I mean, before it was like, yeah, we're going to give a giant tax breaks to the billionaires. It's the reporting on this is so different. It's really quite stark. It's quite remarkable. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Heather with Free Speech TV. Your support, whether through giving of donations, volunteering, or even spreading the word, has made it possible for the only independent progressive news network to sustain for more than 20 years. Now, you can give to Free Speech TV through the Branch of Gratitude. This program is a sustainable way to give that reduces waste through paper mailing, postage, and staff hours. By choosing to participate in the Branch of Gratitude, you are joining hands with the socially conscious community and sending a message to the world that Free Speech TV is not only here to stay, it is here to thrive. Please call 877-378-8669 or go online to freespeech.org. Make a difference and join the Branch of Gratitude today.
It's Midday with Mark. It's our hour-long program here where Congressman Mark Pocan is taking your calls. And Greg in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. Am I saying it right, Greg?
Yes, Manitowoc.
You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, I had a question about the Foxconn deal. Where are Republicans getting these numbers on the number of workers that this place is supposed to employ?
Yeah, so Greg, so if I can, Tom, this is something it's got national news because it's the largest subsidy I think ever in any state to a multinational corporation to incentive in order to bring Fox.
You want to recap it real quickly? Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. There's just a slight delay between our phones because we're both so remote, and I was just saying, would you like to recap it quickly? And as you were in the middle of recapping it, my apologies. Go ahead.
Don't worry. So this is a $3 billion, billion with a B, subsidy to a multinational corporation that has been saying they're going to produce 3,000 jobs and aspirationally up to 13,000 jobs. So, Greg, what you're pointing out is one of my pet peeves is Scott Walker keeps getting away with saying 13,000 jobs, and he's doing the math dividing by what that costs per job, and he's talking about everything else. And the media has been saying up to 13,000 jobs. But the reality is the CEO of Foxconn is saying 3,000 jobs, and I think by the time this actually happens, it could be less than that because I think they'll be putting in more robot technology and other things. And it's going to be the biggest boondoggle we've seen in any state. And I guarantee up in Manitowoc, no one is going to see a dime of benefit from what's happening with something on the state line border with Illinois, where many of those people are going to be working there and living in Illinois, and maybe a few people in the immediate area will see a benefit, but they're not going to see it in Manitowoc or Green Bay or Superior or Madison or a whole lot of other places.
Remarkable. Bill in Midlothian, Virginia. You're on the air with Congressman Mark Pocan.
Oh, yes, sir. I'll thank y'all both for taking my call. What I called to ask about, there was an editorial today in the Richmond newspaper that's actually ironically owned by Warren Buffett, and it brought up some points and counterpoints on both sides of this issue about the health care, and I just want to see if I can get an opinion on it one way or the other. The overall tone of the conversation was both parties need to get the cost curve down on the medical side of the thing, on the doctor, hospital, et cetera side. Because if that doesn't happen, it's not going to make a difference what kind of plan you go into unless you can set prices. But the point they brought up that intrigued me, and this is what I want to ask, the insurance companies are upset about or talking about this plan, but the State Corporation Commission in Virginia said the reason they are is because of these block grants. They're concerned that money that goes to the big states, i.e. California, New York, that they could take this money and they could finally finance their own single-payer plan. You know, it's not because they're nice guys, because I haven't heard anybody say the insurance industry were nice guys. Oh, is that a valid point, the way this money goes out?
I mean, potentially it's up to each state to how they would cover it. The problem is they're going to be having less money to use, especially in some of those bigger states, than they currently have for health care. So right off the bat, there's going to be a crunch created because it's less dollars going out by the way they're doing the block grants. But secondly, I just want to go to your earlier point. You know, when it comes to holding that cost curve down, that's what the Affordable Care Act did. And until the last year, when there was a little bit of a spike after many years of holding those costs flat, you know, a lot of that was due to prescription drug prices, and that's something that many of us are still trying to go after. Those companies, they've been, in many ways, some companies extremely parasitic in how they operate their so-called business model. So, I agree that there's things that we should be able to do to address the cost curve, but that alone is not going to be at all comparable to if you don't have insurance, or if because you have a pre-existing condition, a heart problem, like the 5-year-old child who was doing a press conference with me yesterday, if suddenly it's $50,000 more in order to be covered, they're likely not going to be covered, and that's going to affect them negatively, and then you're going to have somehow someone's still going to have to pay for the cost. It's not like he's not going to have heart surgery, and I think that's why you see some of these other people opposing this plan.
Congressman, one of the big pieces of that cost curve is pharmaceuticals. And Medicare Part D, as negotiated by Billy Towson and his Republican buddies, makes it illegal for the federal government to negotiate drug prices with the pharmaceutical companies. So we're all paying through Medicare, full retail price for drugs, which is obscene. And plus there's the importation of drugs. Most of the drugs people take are not even made in the United States, but it's illegal to import them from a pharmacy in Canada, which is crazy. Are you hearing any talk about changing either one of those policies?
So the only thing I have heard when the director of the FDA became before my subcommittee on appropriations, he was pretty and said some positive things around generic drugs and trying to get more things produced when they're eligible to be generic quicker. But a lot of these issues, the pharmaceutical lobby is so unbelievably prominent in Washington. It's going to be hard to see that happen. I mean, I look at just was it 2 weeks ago, a new drug, a promising drug on childhood leukemia came out, $476,000 a dose, and they did it with NIH research dollars.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls midday with Mark here on the Thom Hartmann Program right after this break. In these times of great peril, we've got Kim Jong-un calling Donald Trump a crazy old man, and Donald Trump calling Kim whatever he's calling him. And this is more than ever, frankly, more than any time. I was going to say more than any time in my lifetime. I think that maybe during the civil rights and Vietnam era, it was also really important to be informed and to be politically active. And frankly, throughout all of my lifetime. It's been important to be informed and politically active. But we just got another study yesterday showing that if we don't do anything about global climate change, there may not be any human beings left on planet Earth 73 years from now, in 2100, number one. And number two, you've got, all these risks of war. I mean, Trump is like, at the same time that he's threatening to pull out of the deal with Iran, he's implicitly saying to North Korea, oh, you could make a deal with us. It's like, you better make a deal with us. And they're like, oh, we can trust you? Really? Is that what you just showed us? So this is a really, really urgent time to have a reasonable and thoughtful conversation about these real issues. And instead, what we're getting in our corporate media is drama and sports. It's who's up, who's down, who's upset. Which of the Republicans is the most upset about, having to vote for Graham Cassidy or something like that? That's not news. Free Speech TV provides you with real information. There has to be a value to that. I'm starting to get quite concerned about how we're raising money like this. I mean, in that we only hit $8,000 yesterday, and we needed to be really at a minimum of $10,000 a day every day. And last week we were at like $2,000, $1,000 a day. So we're way behind and really need your help. Free Speech TV is, you could probably make this ad for me. It's Free Speech TV is an extraordinary television network that provides great value. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and help keep this network on the air. Keep this network going. With a gift of $80, you'll get a Free Speech TV water bottle and the Stamp Stampede stamp from Ben Cohen's, of Ben and Jerry from the Stamp Stampede folks. The water bottle is really great too, by the way. With a $120 gift, or $10 a month for a year, you get Mike Papantonio's book, Law and Vengeance, this new novel that he just literally was just published. With $20 a month, or $240 for the year, you get Mike Papantonio's book, Law and Vengeance, plus They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer. These books are, these are some of the just best books out there, and great gifts, by the way. With a $360 gift, or $30 a month for a year, you get Mike Papantonio's book, Law and Vengeance. You get They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer. And you get, and of course, the water bottle and the Stamp Stampede stamp. And you will get a copy of my book, Unequal Protection. With $480 gift, or $40 a month for a year, you get the water bottle and stamp. You get Law and Vengeance by Mike Papantonio. You get They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer. You get Unequal Protection by me. And you get Democracy in Chains by Nancy MacLean, which is a brilliant book that analyzes and breaks down and describes in rather extraordinary detail, rather breathtaking detail, how a hardcore, essentially fascistic right made up of people who traditionally were not political. They were, the billionaire class, you would refer to them as, or the mercantile class, not classic mercantilists, but the big CEOs. Let's call them the CEO class. How they basically got together and conspired not just to seize control of the Republican Party, or not just to seize control of the dialogue and narrative in our media and everywhere else, but to corrupt our democracy itself, to insinuate, right-wingers, fascists, arguably, in the old sense of the word, the merger of corporate and state interests, to insert fascists into the federal courts, which they're doing right now, like, there's no tomorrow. Full tilt boogie. Mitch McConnell's doing this. Is completely flying under the radar. How they're taking over our universities, how they're taking over they're trying to infiltrate our public schools, They're getting their people elected to everything from school boards to city governments to state governments to federal. And there's a plan and an enormous amount of money behind this. So it's an amazing book. And with a $1,000 gift, come to D.C. or Portland, and we'll have lunch. So give them a call now, 877-378-8669. Please, this is really important. Please call now if you haven't already. Thank you. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And on the line with us is Congressman Mark Pocan. It's Midday with Mark. Congressman Pocan, the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, representing the 2nd District of Wisconsin. Pocan, POCAN.house.gov. You can tweet him at Rep. Mark Pocan. And Margie in Wisconsin Rapids, Wisconsin, you are on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Good morning. My understanding is the S-CHIP program runs out at the end of this month. What is being done?
This is the Children's Health Insurance Program.
The Medicaid for children? What is
no, I was just clarifying for people who didn't know what S-CHIP, yeah. Go ahead.
What is being done to ensure that this program continues?
Yeah, Margie, thanks for calling in from Wisconsin. I do know the Senate, there was, I thought, a deal that they had come around to on this that should be coming before us next week. However, with all the other healthcare stuff, I'm a little concerned what else they might use as bargaining chips, because already they're trying to do whatever they can to get the additional votes they need for the Graham, Cassidy, Heller, Johnson bill, although really we should just call it Trump Care because it's the newest version of Trump Care. The president's supporting it. So I do think that as of right now it's in decent shape as far as what I heard coming out of the Senate. But again, I would watch it very closely through this next week given what's moving on health care.
Mm-hmm. David in Loves Park, Illinois. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yeah, hello. Hold on. Let me get you off a speakerphone. Apologize. Hi, Tom and Congressman. I am calling to say thank you for taking over where Bernie was unable to anymore. I think it's great. Anyways, I wanted to just say that because of you, Tom, and Bernie, and now even you, Congressman Pocan, I've decided I'm running for the state representative district of 68 here in the state of Illinois.
Oh, that's great, David. I'll tell you, when I was in Massachusetts and when I've gone to Barbara Lee's district in California and across the country, I got to tell you what you're saying about Tom's program, I hear over and over. A lot of people, this is a way to connect people so they know what's moving through Congress, what to be moving on to make sure we're responding to be effective. And, I'm glad that we have this ability to have the conversation weekly, and I do everything I can to make it happen, even if we have to move it a day. It's very, very important. And congratulations on running for office. This is one of the things we're finding. A lot of people are running for office right now, and there's going to be a lot of primaries, I think, in all these offices as well, because there's a lot of interest, and that's perfect, right? We need a representative democracy. We need people who really represent average people running for office, which all too often doesn't happen. So congratulations on that, and again, just from my travels around the country, Tom, people love having this sort of a venue.
That's great. Thank you. David, just real quickly, do you have a website you want to plug?
Well, yes. I'm just going to go with that. It's www.soll, SOLL, and then the number 4, and then all.com. So soll4all.com. If there's anyone from Justice Democrats listening, I could certainly use their help too.
Okay, David, thanks a lot for the call. Jim in San Diego, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan. Jim? Okay, let's try Paul in Detroit, Michigan. Paul, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi. Hello, Congressman and Tom. Congressman, this question is not really driven on policy. It's just your coping techniques. Tom does a very good job on his shows, pointing out that sometimes facts are stated by members of the other side, which first glance seem reasonable, and then you realize how much deception is involved. I was just wondering, what are your coping mechanisms, either public or personal, when you're confronted with really blatant dishonesty? As I personally seem to be hearing it more and more nowadays, and they're not even subtle about it. And I know that Congress does have decorum rules on not calling anyone out in public, but it just seems to me that you probably face this on a regular basis, and I'm just curious, how do you deal with it?
Paul, that's a very interesting question, and I got to admit, this year, I've been doing this for 23 years. I was in local government, state government for 14 years, and now my third term in Congress. And, I know you're going to have disagreements with people, and you try to bring them on board on your thoughts, and you try to unite people around values. And since 2010, it's been difficult. This year is just a whole new level. Donald Trump and his administration has just lowered that bar. And quite honestly, Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell have been even more depressing than normal. Paul Ryan has, basically acquiesced his role as Speaker of the House and decided to be, the president's little puppy who rolls over and gets his belly rubbed and does what he's told to. And I think the way I've coped with it is, I've decided that some of the niceties that used to happen don't need to happen in the same way. And, we really rely on being nice in the upper Midwest. But, I've done 4 town halls in Paul Ryan's district this year. If he won't listen to his own constituents, he hasn't done a public town hall in over 690 days, and he wrote a health care bill that's going to cost 20 million people their health care. Someone should explain it to the people who elected him. So I've gone in and done that 4 times. So I think, just getting out there and being the truth teller and finding out how to put out those actual facts has been my best way to cope with it. But thanks for that question.
Carol in Monessen, Pennsylvania. Carol, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Tom. Good afternoon, Congressman. I enjoy your show very much. I think both of you should be on all the networks every day, but that's just my opinion. I have a question for you that maybe you can explain in a way that the average person can understand. I don't get how they are working the math in this bill, this so-called health care bill, so that it will actually provide a big bonus for the very, very wealthy people. Could you explain that in a way that I could understand it? And I'll just hang up and listen.
Sure. So part of it is, I think you've got Koch brothers and others who just want to reform the system. They want to bring it back to a complete for-profit system, and where there's winners and losers, and they're the winners on the bottom line of how it works. Let me address something you mentioned. I think it's been one of the main things they're saying about this bill, and I think it's really important because the semantics are important on this, Carol, is, they say that this will lower costs. Now, this is what it means to say when you lower costs. Conceivably, if a state decides to get rid of pre-existing condition requirements or something else, or just that you can now charge people who might have a pre-existing condition more money, what they're arguing is if you charge someone with a heart disease $50,000 more for their coverage, that ultimately you'll be able to lower the price of coverage for someone who's 21 with nothing wrong with them. And that's where they're saying there's lowered costs. So, arguably you will lower the cost for a very tiny percent of people, but you'll increase the cost significantly to the point that people won't have health care for many, many more. And that's the kind of math in the bill that I look at that I think it's significant, is this kind of false narrative about a lowering cost. It lowers the cost for a very, very, very small amount of people. And for everyone else, it has potential to cost you out of the market. And then if you have to go to the emergency room, that costs the hospital and that costs others, and winds up everyone else pays the bill, but where it should be covered. So I hope that helps out, Carol, but I think that's the math to really put the pinpoint on.
Are they still talking about repealing that roughly 3% surcharge on capital gains to help pay for Obamacare?
Well, they're talking about the medical device fee for sure. This is one of the very interesting things, Tom, I have found. I have tried to find out what it does to some of the tax breaks that were in the original bill, and I can't even find it by doing some searches. I tried the other day because we had a press conference. Because you don't...
And you're a member of Congress.
I know, and because we don't have a CBO score, we will maybe never have all the information before people are voting on this. So I would say at minimum, there should be anyone who votes yes on this should have to pass a test and get at least 90% right on what's in the bill, because I think most people would probably get about 30% right, and that shows why trying to get this done at breakneck speed, because they've stealthily hid this to get it done for the September 3rd deadline, is such a problem, and why people need to call now to stop this.
Yeah. I just missed a time cue from Troy. Where when I'm on the road, we have to use hard brakes. Troy, how much time do we have? Oh, we got a minute and 10 seconds. Stanley, can you ask a real quick question? Stanley in Chino Valley, Arizona.
Good morning, Tom and Congressman Pocan. I do have a very quick question. Tom, you mentioned perhaps 2 months ago on the air that you and Louise preferred a Medicare plan with some sort of an additional plan with it, and my wife and I are considering dumping our present insurance. Can you tell me what that was?
Yeah, the difference is Medicare with a Medigap program, with a fill in the gaps with Medigap versus Medicare Plus. Congressman, you want to speak to those your thoughts on those two things?
I think aspirationally, we've got the Medicare for All bill out there. Right now, what we need to do is make sure that we're shoring up the Affordable Care Act. I think there are different options people can go for their unique condition. What I'm trying to focus on is how we just make sure the largest number of people are covered with affordable, accessible health care.
Yeah, okay. And to the caller's question specifically, I was just saying, personally for myself, when I went on Medicare and when I did all the research on what kind of plans were out there, it looked to me like the Medicare Plus is really just privatizing your Medicare and turning that over to one of the big insurance companies, whereas Medigap, the Medigap policies let you stay on Medicare, plus fills in those 20%. So that's what Louise and I chose to do. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls. It's Midday with Mark here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Back with more of your calls for Congressman Pocan right after this. And welcome back. James, watching Free Speech TV on DirecTV in Uniontown, Pennsylvania. You are on the air with Congressman Mark Pocan.
Hi, Congressman. The question I have is, or the comment is about this morning I was listening to the Morning Joe show, and they were talking about the town hall meeting coming up Monday night that Bernie Sanders is going to have with Graham and
Cassidy.
The other guy Cassidy, Graham and Cassidy, and that by him having this town hall meeting with them, they will be playing into their hands because they'll be taking the focus away from the pitfall of their health care bill when Bernie's talking about Medicare for all. Would you like to comment on that?
Sure, James. So I'm not familiar with the town hall, but if it's as you're presenting, he's going to be there with Lindsey Graham and Senator Cassidy. Bernie's a very smart, savvy guy, and while he will certainly promote why we should have a Medicare for all system, I think he's going to do his very best to point out why no senator should vote for Graham Cassidy that will hurt people in their own districts, and he'll explain the many ways that it's going to hurt people and have potential to hurt people and who really benefits from it. So, for me, anything we can do to raise attention on this, and especially with someone as savvy as Bernie, I can only think it's going to turn out well.
Dave in Hot Springs Village, Arkansas. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, Dave.
Are you there?
I am.
From my old home state. I'm wondering why we can't get more people in Congress on this progressive caucus list. Last I checked, there's a total of 75 and only one senator. Are we making some efforts in that area?
Sure, Dave. No, great question. I mean, first of all, this is a high number for us as far as members, especially in the House. The Senate, we never really had members previously, and only because when Bernie went to the Senate, he stayed a member. I don't think there's been a lot of efforts to increase Senate membership, but on the House side, I'll be real honest, Dave, we're actually running into a different problem, is that it's pretty fashionable right now to be a progressive, and there have been some members who I would argue's voting records maybe aren't the most progressive, who are interested in becoming members to maybe avoid primary challenges or try to maybe distort their records a little bit. And I think our bigger dilemma we have is we want to make sure the Progressive Caucus stands for something, that when we put a bill out there, that our members are sponsoring it and that we're having a unified voice. So we are at a high with 75 members, which is the largest values-based caucus, bigger than the New Dems or certainly bigger than the Blue Dogs. But we're actually starting to run into a little bit of a different dilemma, which is, do you just want to be, if you want to be 130 members, you could, but you may not stand for anything anymore. And I think we actually are having this internal conversation.
That's, it's kind of an embarrassment of riches. That's great. By the way, the one of the things that I think is one of the most important things that the Congressional Progressive Caucus does every year or every 2 years is submit a budget. And well, we're running out of time, but at some point I'd love to hear your thoughts on, how that budget is doing. But we'll be right back. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us taking your calls. He's the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Pocan.house.gov is his website. You can tweet him at @RepMarkPocan. We'll be right back.
Hi there, I'm Marie with Free Speech TV. Your support, whether through giving donations, volunteering, or spreading the word about Free Speech TV, has made it possible for the only independent progressive news network to exist. And for that, I want to say thank you. Now you can give to the network powered by the people by donating an unwanted or used vehicle through our Vehicles of Change program. If you have an old car, RV, or even a motorcycle, Free Speech TV can use it to grow and thrive. You can make a bigger difference in supporting Free Speech TV by giving an old car. It's a great way to support the network without having to dig into your bank account. Just call 877-378-8669 and ask for more information about Vehicles of Change. Again, the number to call is 877-378-8669. If it has a VIN, we'll take it in. Thank you.
And welcome back, Congressman Mark Pocan on the line, taking your calls. And Joe in Columbus, Ohio. Hey, Joe, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Tom and Congressman. My original thing was a call about CHIP because I was a little worried about 9 million kids are at risk there, plus mothers. And what was going on, you gave sort of an answer, so we'll just have to wait on that and hope that works out. But I do have another thing for you. Axios has an article called Analysis State Senate's Health Care Costs Could Top $4 Trillion. Cuts. I'm sorry, not cuts. And within that article, they have a link to Avelair Health Consulting. And that was funded by the Center for American Progress. And it goes into quite some detail on who's going to win, who's going to lose. Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, Joe, so
where the states...
I haven't seen that particular study, but, clearly I think we all know that healthcare costs are something that we have to be controlling, and a big part of the Affordable Care Act was controlling many of the costs. I think the pharmaceutical industry was probably the most brazen in being the first major violators of that. But if you go back to the old system, you will have costs going up, and I guarantee everyone's rates are going to go up. If you start having it so that people have to go to emergency rooms and don't have coverage, someone's got to pay for that, and that falls on the hospitals, and that's going to fall on costs. You're going to have this huge escalation. Once again, it's just basic economics 101. So, I think while some people are trying to say that this is going to reduce the price of premiums, again, I think I tried to explain that that's going to be for a very, very small amount of people. Maybe if you're young and healthy, you'll pay less. But for anyone who actually needs health care, who has any pre-existing condition, it could very likely price you out of the market.
Yeah, and the study he was referring to, we talked about yesterday on the program, showed that California and New York is basically the blue Democratic states that implemented full Medicaid expansion will lose billions, tens of billions of dollars, and states like Texas in particular was one of the big winners, will gain billions of dollars because basically what this bill does is the red states will begin accepting federal money, and they're going to cut back the federal money overall to all the states, which would be all the blue states that took those expansions. That's
and that's absolutely correct. What'll happen also, that's, again, a private funded study that's trying to say states like Wisconsin actually, because Scott Walker didn't expand Medicaid, will see a benefit actuarially, although not a benefit to the people. But then we've seen other studies saying that actually it'll still cost Wisconsin money. So that's part of why we need a CBO score, because a privately paid study by someone who has an interest in this is probably not the best study for us to be voting on a complete reform of 1/6 of the national economy.
Yeah, amen. Even when they're on our side. Dick in Billings, Montana. Hey, Dick, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Good morning. How are you? Let me take you off speakerphone. So a question is, if to go down the road towards single payer, shouldn't we get rid of the business deduction for healthcare cost?
So, Dick, I don't know if putting a squeeze on businesses who are providing health insurance is going to get us closer to single payer. I think ultimately that might cost some businesses from providing health insurance, and then that will hurt people who are out there not having policies. I think what we do is it aspirationally. If people are tired of an ongoing, never-ending debate on health care, and they know someone close to them who's got a pre-existing condition or, one of the essential health benefits, mental health coverage or something else they could lose, this doesn't make sense that we have this ongoing fight and people don't know literally from month to month, year to year, whether or not they have health insurance. I think that's what Barack Obama brought up this past week, is that, when you have a never-ending changes to health care, there's no continuity whatsoever, and that alone is a strong argument. And previously, Tom and I have talked about why it's advantageous to businesses to have a single-payer system because they could save money. Cars alone, they say the price of steel in an American car is less than the health insurance cost. So there's a lot of other ways I think we could promote single-payer without doing anything that might have any damage potentially.
Congressman, in the last little less than a minute of this hour, what should we be watching in the upcoming week here?
I think we got to watch what deals they try to cut in order to do this health care. I know right now there's a report about exempting Alaska from this, allowing them to still have the Affordable Care Act to try to get Murkowski. We have to watch what deals they'll cut, how desperate they are to get this done by September 30th, and then put a lot of pressure on people to not accept those deals.
Right, and people should continue to call their members of Congress and basically all of these, shall we say, vulnerable Republicans or swingable Republicans, Collins, Murkowski.
Call your members of Congress and then work with Indivisible, where they can hook you up into people's districts to convince someone maybe in Oklahoma to call their legislator in Oklahoma. If you live in a district where your member of Congress and senators maybe are supporting you, you can still be impactful and get calls delivered to people who need to get the calls. But Indivisible is one of those groups doing that.
That's great. Congressman Pocan, thanks so much for being with us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com. Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com. Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242 or visit tomsbeets.com.
In these times of great peril, we've got Kim Jong-un calling Donald Trump a crazy old man, and Donald Trump calling Kim whatever he's calling him. And this is more than ever, frankly, more than any time. I was going to say more than any time in my lifetime. I think that maybe during the civil rights and Vietnam era, it was also really important to be informed and to be politically active. And frankly, throughout all of my lifetime, it's been important to be informed and politically active. But we just got another study yesterday showing that if we don't do anything about global climate change, there may not be any human beings left on planet Earth 73 years from now, in 2100, number one. And number two, you've got, all these risks of war. I mean, Trump is like, at the same time that he's threatening to pull out of the deal with Iran, he's implicitly saying to North Korea, "Oh, you could make a deal with us." It's like, you better make a deal with us. And they're like, "Oh, we can trust you? Really? Is that what you just showed us?" So this is a really, really urgent time to have a reasonable and thoughtful conversation about these real issues. And instead, what we're getting in our corporate media is drama in sports. It's who's up, who's down, who's upset. Which of the Republicans is the most upset about, having to vote for Graham Cassidy or something like that? That's not news. Free Speech TV provides you with real information. There has to be a value to that. I'm starting to get quite concerned about how we're raising money like this. I mean, in that we only hit $8,000 yesterday, and we needed to be really at a minimum of $10,000 a day every day. And last week we were at like $1,000 a day. So we're way behind and really need your help. Free Speech TV is, you could probably make this ad for me. It's Free Speech TV is an extraordinary television network that provides great value. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and help keep this network on the air. Keep this network going. With a gift of $80, you'll get a Free Speech TV water bottle and the Stamp Stampede stamp from Ben Cohen's, of Ben and Jerry from the Stamp Stampede folks. The water bottle is really great too, by the way. With a $120 gift, or $10 a month for a year, you get Mike Papantonio's book, Law and Vengeance, this new novel that he just literally was just published. With $20 a month, or $240 for the year, you get Mike Papantonio's book, Law and Vengeance, plus They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer. These books are, these are some of the just best books out there, and great gifts, by the way. With a $360 gift, or $30 a month for a year, you get Mike Papantonio's book, Law and Vengeance. You get They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer. And you get, and of course, the water bottle and the Stamp Stampede stamp. And you will get a copy of my book, Unequal Protection. With $480 gift, or $40 a month for a year, you get the water bottle and stamp. You get Law and Vengeance by Mike Papantonio. You get They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer. You get Unequal Protection by me. And you get Democracy in Chains by Nancy MacLean, which is a brilliant book that analyzes and breaks down and describes in rather extraordinary detail, rather breathtaking detail, how a hardcore, essentially fascistic right made up of people who traditionally were not political. They were the billionaire class, you would refer to them as, or the mercantile class. Not classic mercantilists, but the big CEOs. Let's call them the CEO class. How they basically got together and conspired not just to seize control of the Republican Party, or not just to seize control of the dialogue and narrative in our media and everywhere else, but to corrupt our democracy itself, to insinuate, right-wingers, fascists, arguably, in the old sense of the word, the merger of corporate and state interests, to insert fascists into the federal courts, which they're doing right now like, there's no tomorrow. Full tilt boogie. Mitch McConnell's doing this. Is completely flying under the radar. How they're taking over our universities, how they're taking over they're trying to infiltrate our public schools. They're getting their people elected to everything from school boards to city governments to state governments to federal. And there's a plan or an enormous amount of money behind this. So it's an amazing book. And with a $1,000 gift, come to DC or Portland, and we'll have lunch. So give them a call now, 877-378-8669. Please, this is really important. Please call now if you haven't already. Thank you.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you live from Portland, Oregon. And the whole situation around Equifax and this hack and all this kind of stuff raises some really, really big issues. And the main one is the increasing tendency on the part, business model of large corporations to turn you and me into the product, and then in many cases sell it to us, sell ourselves back to us, as it were. And you see this increasingly if you go on, if you go in a search engine and you look for something, and then suddenly you start seeing ads for that, or even if you get an email about something and you start seeing ads for it, if you're using one of the email services from one of the companies that has a search engine. This is not limited to Google. This is happening with some of the other ones as well. But the credit thing is a particularly interesting one. I remember back in the 1970s, I started Terry O'Connor, my business partner, and I started a company, the Woodley Erber Company, and then we had an ad agency called Terrographics. This was in '72. And we wanted to be able to buy equipment. We ultimately had it was an herbal tea company, and we ultimately had 18 employees, a full factory in Okemos, Michigan, in the old R.E. Olds mansion, which at that point was just kind of a falling down giant old house, but it worked fine for us. And in order to buy equipment, leasing it, that sort of thing, you had to have good credit. And the way that you had good credit back in the 70s, keep in mind, again, this was before the Reagan era of the massive deregulation of banking and things. Pretty much everything was done through Dun & Bradstreet, D&B. And so you call up a company and say, hey, I'd like to get a copy machine, or we need a mixing contraption, for the herbs or whatever. And so we'd like to lease a $5,000 piece of equipment or whatever, and they would say, well, what's your D&B number? And you'd say, oh, it's 23-149722 or whatever. And they would immediately look it up because you gave them your number.
And now that they have your number and they have your permission, they would contact Dun & Bradstreet and say, you know, what's this guy's credit history or what's the company's credit history? And these were, you know, essentially sole proprietorships and partnerships. So it was our personal stuff as well as our business stuff. And D&B would give you a rating, and they would convey that rating to people. And that seems like the way it should be, right? You know, in fact, for us to get that D&B number, we had to be in business over, as I recall, a year, maybe it was 2 years, and we had to do a certain level of business. And I mean, it was, you had to, I went through this myself personally. This is a personal experience. Had to contact Dun & Bradstreet, say, we would like to have you rate our credit. We would like to be rated by Dun & Bradstreet. I don't recall if we paid a fee for it or not. My recollection vaguely is that there was an application fee to be rated by Dun & Bradstreet. You know, I'm not sure exactly where the money flowed on that. I think also when companies asked them for my credit information, once I gave them my number, they would also have to pay D&B. So, you know, there was a way to make money here. But what has happened now with Experian and Equifax and Trans, whatever it is, the third company, Transamerica, I think, with these three giant rating companies, credit rating companies, is they have just reached out to all of the, you know, the financial agencies, the credit card companies, the banks, and everybody else, the mortgage companies, and gotten all our information without our saying, please do it, without our asking for it, without our giving them permission to do it. They have acquired all this information, and not all of it is publicly available. This isn't like, you know, compiling voter records where that information is publicly available. You know, you have to, if somebody wants to know, you know, my activity with my bank or with my, you know, whatever it may be, my mortgage or whatever, you know, they have to contact my banker and get that information. And I've never had a credit card, you know, a credit reporting company contact me, call me, email me, or anything and say, you know, may we have your permission to know, you know, what's in your checking account or what your credit card line of credit is or whatever. You know, they don't ask you for that permission. They simply go out and get your information, and then they sell your information. And it's a big business. And we are the product. And we never consented to this. And if you don't want them to pass your information out to people or actually sell your information to people, if you don't want them to, you have to do what's called a credit freeze, and you have to pay them to freeze your credit. And then it's only good for, you know, it depends on how long you pay for, but typically at the most 1 year. You know, you can't call up one of these companies and say, you know, I'd just like to go off the grid. You know, I'm at a point in my life where, you know, I'm not using credit, or what I'm using right now is just fine. My mortgage is there. My credit cards are there. Everything is solid. Just erase me from your records. You can't do that. And why the heck not? So I think that there's a really strong case to be made for us to re-examine the entire business model of American citizens being the product that is being sold. Whether it is Facebook looking at every like you've ever liked and concluding that you know, you have a preference for vegetarian food, and you like you know, pictures of rainbows, and you tend to follow Democratic politicians, and I mean, they've got this down to, they can literally say, you know, people who are more likely to be depressed, people who are more likely to. The latest scandal with Facebook was you know, somebody said, hey, I want to place an ad that goes to people who hate Jews, and they were like, sure, here's a list. Give us the money, we'll put the ad there. Say, what? Hate Jews? Really? This actually happened just last week. So you've got, you know, Facebook is selling us, Google is selling us, Microsoft, you know, the Bing search engine, they're selling us. the big three credit agencies and a bunch of smaller ones are selling us. You can bet your bottom dollar that your bank is selling you. If you have credit cards with gas companies, gasoline companies, or with department stores, things like that, they're selling your information. We have become the product. And, I realize that the Fourth Amendment, which guarantees our right to privacy, our person's papers and effects, and residence. I realize that the Fourth Amendment is a protection of a right to privacy being, to prevent that right to privacy from being violated by the government. The Fourth Amendment does not give you the right not to have your privacy violated. It does not say that you can be protected from privacy violations by private corporations, only by government. But law can be made, and has been made in the past, and unmade, and made and unmade, that does provide you with privacy protections. And I think this whole Experian hack, and now the criminal investigation into it and everything, and the whole media thing about it is, how's it going to affect the company, or was there an executive who behaved criminally? Nobody's even asking the question: is this whole business model idea of selling us, you and me, we are the product, that are being sold to everybody from politicians to soap manufacturers, shouldn't there be some regulation of that?
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Anyhow, my rant for the second hour here, it's Anything Goes Friday. We'll pick up your phone calls after this. And welcome back. Bob in Kalispell, Montana, watching us on the Dish Network on Free Speech TV. Hey, Bob, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Well, gee whiz. First off, I'm not watching on the Dish Network. I'm just watching you on Roku.
Okay, great. Thank you.
My Dish Network, and that's how I came up with the money to make my $30 a month donation to Free Speech TV. By cutting the cable.
All right.
I'm sorry I missed Congressman Program, but I'm hoping your listeners can help on this. If you're a veteran and you're having mental problems and you end up with a bad conduct discharge, you can't get any mental health counseling. And I would argue...
Bob, your phone is breaking up really, really badly. It was okay when you first started. If you've walked into a part of your house where your phone is falling apart, go back where you were. But it sounds to me like what you said is if you have a bad conduct discharge, that you don't have access to Veterans Health Services after you leave the military. Do I have that right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that needs to change. And many times it's actually problems caused by your service that end up causing your bad conduct discharge. So I know.
Right. So somebody goes into combat and. So somebody goes into combat, comes back with PTSD. Part of that PTSD is...
You're going to reach out and start doing drugs and other things to cope with it. Next thing you know, you're out on the street with nothing. I fortunately had an honorable discharge. But, I could very easily have gone the other way. So I hope people will call their congressmen, senators, and tell them, we're doing this health overhaul. We can't leave out veterans, and this new bill they got in mind is just really going to screw veterans big time. So
how so?
They could do things. Oh, there's a lot of these cuts are going to affect veterans just as badly as they do any of the rest of us. At least we think, because we really don't know what's in the bill. If it does the same things the previous iterations did, there will be big cuts to VA benefits.
Yeah, remarkable. Is there, for somebody with a bad conduct discharge, that doesn't inhibit their ability to get just normal insurance and things like that. That just basically cuts them off from VA services, right?
Well, that bad conduct discharge can follow you around like a rabid dog. It'll cause it can have affect your ability to get a job. Very often, the thing that gave you the bad conduct discharge is an ongoing mental health problem that you need help with in order just to cope with life. And if you can't get care from the VA, where do you get care from? I guarantee you there's not much support out here on the street. You know, we're watching it's all over the place every day.
It's a terrible catch-22, and I'm guessing that a lot of homeless vets find themselves in this situation.
Exactly, and I've known a lot of them through my years. So I spent a long time living on the streets myself. So
this is the consequence of war. I mean, this war injures people, even the people it doesn't kill, even the people it doesn't physically injure. It wounds people mentally and emotionally and spiritually. Bob, thanks for the call. It's a great topic, and thanks for watching this on your Roku box there. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Valerie with Free Speech TV. We're proud to provide you with independent, unfiltered news and documentaries. And as our valued viewer, you can help us continue bringing Free Speech TV well into the future. Join our Pearly Gate Rebels, our planned giving program. Your gift of any size will help ensure democracy endures through an informed citizenry. You can donate property, money, or assets. It's easy. My spouse and I are proud Pearly Gate Rebels. We're doing our part to ensure that Free Speech TV will be here to deliver thought-provoking news and information well into the future. Join us. Call 877-378-8669 or email me at valerie@freespeech.org. Rebel against media owned by billionaires and become one of our Pearly Gate Rebels today.
Friday here on the Thom Hartmann Program, and Grant in Kenmore, Washington. Hey, Grant, what's on your mind today?
Good day. I was going to ask the congressman, so I'll expand my question a little bit more. I was just wondering what Congress is doing or what legislation is being put forward to help conserve our soils and watersheds. I called in a few weeks ago because I had my concerns with the fast flooding in Texas, but it is a national concern.
Yeah, that many of the problems in Houston are arguably the result of a lack of good zoning that was designed to like here in Portland, there's a greenway all over the city. I mean, there's green spaces all over this town, and many of them are mandated by zoning, and because it rains so much here, it absorbs the water, so. It's a good thing. Houston has basically been turned into a parking lot, and so the soil is not, available to absorb the water. But that, the other problem, of course, was that because the atmosphere has 6% more moisture in it than it used to, and the oceans are warmer than they used to be, a giant hurricane produces a giant storm, which just flooded everybody out. With regard to legislation on this grant, to the best of my knowledge, not only is Congress not doing anything to protect our watersheds and our land, but the opposite is happening under the Trump administration. You've got Ryan Zinke rolling back protections in our national parks. I mean, they've already said, okay, now you can carry guns in national parks and things like that. I mean, but now he wants to cut back on them, bring in the oil companies, bring in the drilling companies, which inevitably will produce more pollution in the air and water. And, so that's going backwards. And then in the EPA, you've got Scott Pruitt, and these guys are both, reliable toadies for the hard right, for the Koch brothers and their network and all the other polluting industries in this country. These were their go-to guys, which is why Mike Pence recommended to Donald Trump that he pick them for, Commerce and Interior, EPA and Interior. And
I sure would love to be the flip side of the coin and go with what Trump always says, that he's a contractor and loves to build on things, because I do think this is, and I mean the pun, common ground we can stand on.
Yeah. Well, that we haven't even addressed the issue of the commons, like the green spaces here in Portland are the commons. They're part of the commons, the common areas. And that it's so funny because, the conservative liberal wars here in Portland, when I used to live here in Portland, I observed them, firsthand. And very often it was around the commons, should we have public parks, or should the city sell that land off to, XYZ corporation that wants to put an office building there or something like that. And this city has always held, public parks and public spaces in high regard. And they're very, very emphatic about water pollution and things like that. When we used to live in a floating home community here in Portland, if there was from anything from a sewage spill to a paint spill into the water, it was a $10,000 fine, and they enforced it. It was a big deal. So it has to do with where you are. The worldview on this and the perspective in Texas is very different than here. Grant, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. Scott in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Hey, Scott, what's up?
Well, Tom, thanks again for what you do. Well, first of all, thank Lamar Alexander, our representative, who once again turned his back on us, as he was at least trying to talk to a Democrat. And soon as Lindsey's, fiasco came on, he just bailed on us. So, thanks, Lamar. Since it's Anything Goes Friday, I wanted to send out a final toast to Chantek the orangutan. He was raised as a human. He came to UTC, that's University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, in '79 at 9 months old. He was here for 9 years. I was taking journalism courses during that time, and he walked the campus. He was on a leash, but he led an active social life. He went to the local amusement parks. He went to the local Dairy Queen. He learned human sign language and had the vocabulary of a 7 to 8-year-old. Keep in mind, he's only 9, and he was taught things like go to the bathroom, clean up your room. I mean, this guy was just a real trip. He died recently in Zoo Atlanta because after 9 years they removed him. He got what I call Republicaned, and that's just where somebody got dealt a raw blow, and reason and rationale just weren't even factors, because he was an incredibly gentle person. Animal Planet, if you ever wanted, Animal Planet did a special on him, the ape that went to college.
That sounds fascinating. The ape that went to college. I'll have to check it out. Scott, this is one of the big failings, I think, of our modern society, is that we view every other living thing on Earth as being not just inferior to us and subordinate to us, but simply here for us. And if we can't figure out a use, we just ruin them, which is such a shame. Scott, thanks for the call.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Back with more of your calls on Anything Goes Friday right after this break. In these times of great peril, we've got Kim Jong-un calling Donald Trump a crazy old man, and Donald Trump calling Kim whatever he's calling him. And this is more than ever, frankly, more than any time. I was going to say more than any time in my lifetime. I think that maybe during the civil rights and Vietnam era, it was also really important to be informed and to be politically active. And frankly, throughout all of my lifetime, it's been important to be informed and politically active. But we just got another study yesterday showing that if we don't do anything about global climate change, there may not be any human beings left on planet Earth 73 years from now in 2100, number one. And number two, you've got, all these risks of war. I mean, Trump is like, at the same time that he's threatening to pull out of the deal with Iran, he's implicitly saying to North Korea, oh, you could make a deal with us. It's like, you better make a deal with us. And they're like, oh, we can trust you? Really? Is that what you just showed us? So this is a really, really urgent time to have a reasonable and thoughtful conversation about these real issues. And instead, what we're getting in our corporate media is drama and sports. It's who's up, who's down, who's upset. Which of the Republicans is the most upset about, having to vote for Graham Cassidy or something like that? That's not news. Free Speech TV provides you with real information. There has to be a value to that. I'm starting to get quite concerned about how we're raising money like this. I mean, in that we only hit $8,000 yesterday, and we needed to be really at a minimum of $10,000 a day every day. And last week we were at like $2,000, $1,000 a day. So we're way behind and really need your help. Free Speech TV is, you could probably make this ad for me. It's Free Speech TV is an extraordinary television network that provides great value. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and help keep this network on the air. Keep this network going. With a gift of $80, you'll get a Free Speech TV water bottle and the Stamp Stampede stamp from Ben Cohen's, of Ben and Jerry from the Stamp Stampede folks. The water bottle is really great too, by the way. With a $120 gift, or $10 a month for a year, you get Mike Papantonio's book, Law and Vengeance, this new novel that he just literally was just published. With $20 a month, or $240 for the year, you get Mike Papantonio's book, Law and Vengeance, plus They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer. These books are, these are some of the just best books out there, and great gifts, by the way. With a $360 gift, or $30 a month for a year, you get Mike Papantonio's book, Law and Vengeance. You get They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer. And you get, and of course, the water bottle and the Stamp Stampede stamp. And you will get a copy of my book, Unequal Protection. With $480 gift, or $40 a month for a year, you get the water bottle and stamp. You get Law and Vengeance by Mike Papantonio. You get They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer. You get Unequal Protection by me. And you get Democracy in Chains by Nancy MacLean, which is a brilliant book that analyzes and breaks down and describes in rather extraordinary detail, rather breathtaking detail, how a hardcore, essentially fascistic right made up of people who traditionally were not political. They were the billionaire class, you would refer to them as, or the mercantile class, not classic mercantilists, but the big CEOs. Let's call them the CEO class. How they basically got together and conspired not just to seize control of the Republican Party, or not just to seize control of the dialogue and narrative in our media and everywhere else, but to corrupt our democracy itself, to insinuate, right-wingers, fascists, arguably, in the old sense of the word, the merger of corporate and state interests, to insert fascists into the federal courts, which they're doing right now, like, there's no tomorrow. Full tilt boogie. Mitch McConnell's doing this. Is completely flying under the radar. How they're taking over our universities, how they're taking over they're trying to infiltrate our public schools. They're getting their people elected to everything from school boards to city governments to state governments to federal. And there's a plan and an enormous amount of money behind this. So it's an amazing book. And with a $1,000 gift, come to D.C. or Portland, and we'll have lunch. So give them a call now, 877-378-8669. Please, this is really important. Please call now if you haven't already. Thank you. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and it's Anything Goes Friday. On the line with us, Armin from Bradenton, Florida. Hey, Armin, what's on your mind?
Tom, please let me make a couple points now. Promise you I won't rant.
What's up, Armin?
Okay. Number one, let's talk about the Republicans in Congress. They're lying hypocrites. You know it, and I know it. And you know what this health care bill is really all about. It's setting up a structure so that they can go to the 50 states, but they'll go to, like, Delaware and incorporate, and then the insurance companies will buy up all the other insurance companies. There'll be one big behemoth, and you won't have any choice but junk health care that doesn't pay anything with exorbitant premiums that they can ratchet up when they want to make a couple billion today or tomorrow, whatever. It's an absolute...
Sure, we're already halfway there. I agree.
And the other thing, I got a couple more, I promise I won't rant, is the Republicans, they're lunatics. The fact is, every Republican in Congress completely lives off single-payer health care. Every one of them. And the ones, the far right, that try to say we all just need medical savings accounts and a cheap catastrophic policy, I'll bet you there's not one Republican in Congress, in the House or the Senate, that has the most cost-effective, cheapest cost to the taxpayers health care plan. Bet you maybe, I could be wrong, there could be one out of the...
Well, they're all on our Obamacare, Armin. That was the provision that the Republicans required. Republicans actually got to write parts of Obamacare, unlike the Republicans now refusing to let the Democrats even put one word in their stupid, Obamacare repeal legislation. And one of the requirements that the Republicans, and they thought they were so smart and so slick, was that if you are a member of the House or Senate, you and your staff are required by law to have the only health insurance that the federal government will compensate for, will buy for you, is Obamacare. So they're all registered on the Obamacare exchange in Washington, D.C., which, by the way, we use for our employees. It's a great program. It's very inexpensive, and it's really, really good coverage. But it is through the health insurance companies, but with subsidies. So I don't know if that changes your thinking, Armin, but just as a point of fact.
Well, it's single payer, though. They're all single payer. The federal government...
No, they're not, actually.
Yeah,
the government is helping out, but it's not Medicare. No, it used to be that there were
single payer. It's single payer. It's not Medicare, but it's single payer. The fact is,
okay.
let me
all right.
If I could, please, and I won't rant. Okay, we can agree to disagree. Okay, let's talk about the military. All these people out there, I see them on the sites, and they're calling Kim in Korea a cult leader, and all the people need to burn and fry because they're all cult members. Well, here's my thing, and I think we're closer than you can imagine on this. Maybe the way we articulate it's a little different. Name a country in the history of the world that has sent more of their brainwashed and indoctrinated military to other countries to murder, kill, and maim innocent people solely based on what they were told. Doesn't matter if it's a lie. Doesn't matter if it's constitutional. Nothing matters. It's always look at Iraq. You know, and I know it was stuff. It was
no, I got it, Armin. And back in the 15th and 16th and 17th centuries, it was Holland and France and Russia, not Russia, excuse me, and England, by and large, who were doing the imperial power thing. Even Belgium got into the act in the French Congo. I get to what you're saying. Armin, we try to keep people to one topic per call. My apologies to everybody else. You got 3, but thanks a lot for the call. It's always nice to hear from you. Paul in Franklinville, New York. Hey, Paul, what's up?
Hello, Tom. I have this public law, number 85-425, section 410. Someone put on the Facebook that this is illegal to take down Confederate statues.
Why would it be illegal?
Because of the statements in this law.
Is it a state law or a federal law?
It's a public law through the federal law, 85-425, section 410.
Right. I don't know anything about that, Paul. I guarantee you, if it was actually illegal to take down a Confederate monument, there would be massive lawsuits going on, and a lot of the monuments that have been taken down in the recent past wouldn't have been. But the reality, and Paul, thank you for the call, the reality is that these statues are not historical memorials. These statues are celebrations. They're celebrations of white supremacy, pure and simple. They're celebrations of traitors against the United States of America who became traitors against the United States in order to protect their own economic interest. And it's really that simple. Slavery, however they rationalized it, slavery was an economic system, just like serfdom was, just like capitalism is for that matter. It was a barbaric, cruel, brutal economic system, but it was an economic system. And the South was wed to that. The South, when you consider the value of the slaves that were held there, was the wealthiest part of the country. Actually, at the time of secession, this was one of the arguments that was made for secession down south, particularly by the South Carolinians. And until we acknowledge that these guys, they were like, the heroes of the Confederacy, in quotes, who committed treason. They were traitors to the United States. Were simply defending their wealth, or the wealth of the wealthiest among them, who tended to spread that wealth around a little bit to white people. And that was it. I mean, this was just an insanely cruel and corrupt system. And when history began to reflect that, in the 1880s, the 1890s, the early 1900s, there were 3 eras, basically. One in the 1890s, one in the early 1910s, and one in the late 1920s. 3 different eras where, reflecting the separate but equal decision in 1898 by the Supreme Court. Of course, in the 1880s, the end of Reconstruction. And then in the 19-teens, the Ku Klux Klan recruiting movie, Birth of a Nation, that came out. And so this is all the stuff this is what they're celebrating. And so, I have no compassion for those statues. George in Crystal Lake, Illinois. Hey, George, what's on your mind today? George? Okay, no George. Terry in Silver Springs, Nevada. Hey, Terry, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I wanted to share my white privilege story. Just perfect timing. A couple days ago, I got pulled over for doing 70 and at 45. I didn't actually get pulled over. As soon as I saw the cops' taillights, I just pulled over. And my husband was following me, so he pulled over. And I thought, why are you pulling over now? We're both going to get a ticket. So I started looking for my paperwork, and the cop came up to Larry first because he was behind me. And I found I couldn't find my insurance card. So I thought, I know they hate this, but I knew he wasn't going to shoot me. So I got out of the car, and I walked back there, and I go, I know you hate this. I go, but I got to ask him a question. I go, Larry, I can't find our insurance card. And Larry just looked mortified. He goes, oh, no. And the cop started to laugh. And he hands me back my driver's license. He goes, here, hold on to this for a minute. So I said, okay, I'm going to go back and dig some more. So I went around to the passenger side and opened that door and started digging through all, the jockey blocks and stuff. It's not there. The insurance card, I don't have one in the car. And I'm thinking, oh, great. Now I can add this to my ticket. And I turned around, and the cop's back at his cruiser. He's getting ready to leave. And I run to the back of my car, and I yell, what about me? And he smiled and waved and said, have a nice day. And he drove off.
Yeah, that's,
He was going to jail. Nothing happened to us. He wanted to talk to Larry
and every
shot vehicle or whatever.
Oh, really? Yeah, and pretty much most white people who have been driving for more than a decade can tell you stories like that, where the police have treated them very nicely under circumstances that had they been black, they might have ended up dead. And that's
in black. Yeah, there's, I wouldn't have done it. I knew I wasn't going to get shot. Anyway,
yeah, it is
bizarre levity.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a great story, Terry. Thank you for the call. And this is the whole point here, is that if we're going to talk about, and we need to talk about white privilege and talk about white supremacy. In fact, really, those monuments, as much as they're monuments, I said they're monuments to white privilege. It was white privilege that allowed them to become monuments. They're really monuments to white supremacy, to this belief that is widely held. I mean, the Mormon Church used it, even had a religious rationale right up until the 1970s. They would not allow, I believe it was the 70s, might have been the 80s even, would not allow black people to become priests in the Mormon Church. And everybody who's like a full member, every man who's a full member in the Mormon Church ultimately becomes a priest, right, in quotes, because they said it was the mark of Cain. I mean, these kinds of rationalizations for white supremacy and the doctrine of white supremacy is what that's all about. And this is a problem. I get it. There are people of color talking about this. But this is a problem that white people need to talk to other white people about. We need to wake folks.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's 45 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls, and we're going to also check in with Talk Media News today. Stick with us. And welcome back. Michael in Imperial Beach, California. Hey, Michael, what's on your mind? Thanks for watching us on Free Speech TV.
Hey, Mr. Hartmann. Okay, about your last rant, 30 seconds. If we the people have become a product, first, who are the we? And second, do the rich have the same, I'm going to use the term crime, do the rich have their own laws to make them untouchable to being a product, unlike we the people are? Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, well, they do it in a different way, Michael, and not being a multimillionaire myself, I haven't, had this direct experience, but I've known some very wealthy people in my life, and what they tend to do is they create corporations. They create these limited liability corporations, in some cases multiple ones. They distribute their assets through them. They create trusts as a way of getting around estate taxes and the taxes on the transfer of money to family members and things. And much of this then renders them individually more or less invisible. And in fact, probably the wealthiest person I ever knew was a guy, he was worth, almost $1 billion. Had inherited it from his father. He was a very decent man, a good progressive, just recently died a little while ago. And he never even carried money. He had no checking account. He didn't carry money in his pocket. He had a fellow who did that. And, anything that needed to be done was just done, kind of remotely. And so I think at that level of wealth that those folks are not so concerned about being the product. The people who are buying the information or stealing the information from Experian and Transamerica and the various credit reporting companies, or for that matter, buying or stealing our information from department stores and gas stations and whoever else airlines, whoever else may be issuing your credit card if you have an affiliate card and whatnot. If you click that, even if you don't click the box that says, sure, send me special offers, what they're really looking for, they're not trying to market to wealthy people. There's a whole separate channel for marketing to wealthy people. Plum TV, for example, a television network that is only in about a half a dozen or a dozen communities in the United States that's exclusively for people who are multimillionaires. Google it. It's mind-boggling, assuming that they're still on the air. So there's separate and independent ways that but really what they want to market to their primary market is not even people who are doing okay, people who have who have a little discretionary income and whatnot, because those people tend to have a handle on their finances. They're looking for people who are struggling, and they're trying to sell them things that have hope associated with it. They're trying to sell them college loans. They're trying to sell them for-profit college programs, online college programs, and things like that. They're trying to sell them, we'll help you out with the IRS. We'll help you reduce your credit card debt. They're trying to sell them low, so-called, subprime loans. Tragically. And so that's who's really, in my opinion, being hurt the most by this. Michael, thanks for the call. The people being the product, it's a real problem. Patrick Gavin with Talk Media News will be with us in just a moment. Stick around. Welcome back. Let's check in with Talk Media News and find out what's going on in the world today. This report brought to you by goatsfortheoldgoat.com and Loving What You Do, Alan Ratner's new book. And on the line with us, Patrick Gavin with Talk Media News. Hey, Patrick.
Hey, how are you?
Just great. What's going on in the world today?
Well, it looks like we have about 8 days till we find out the fate of this, I believe it's round 3 of trying to repeal and replace Obamacare via the Graham-Cassidy bill. And it's funny what a difference a week makes. I think it was a week ago this time that all the headlines really expressed the Republican Party's newfound optimism for how this round would be their most successful round. But, we're now even hearing reports that Trump himself is privately harboring doubts. And beyond that, probably not terribly surprising, he's kind of ambivalent, in fact, about not only what's in the bill, but its chances of success. There are plenty of folks in his party for whom repealing and replacing Obamacare is first and foremost. Trump, I think, in his heart of hearts, would, I think, rather not suffer yet another round of embarrassments than go through this. And also just expressing a lot of concerns about whether or not it can even pass the Senate or the House at this point. On top of that, I mean, all eyes still remain on Susan Collins, on John McCain and Lisa Murkowski.
Well, Susan Collins this morning on one of the morning shows, I think it was Good Morning America, was asked right straight up, do you have concerns about this bill? And she said, yes, I'm very concerned that, I'm paraphrasing here, but I'm very concerned that the states that take the waivers will be, the health insurance companies will be able to discriminate based on previous conditions, on pre-existing conditions. And therefore, I'm strongly inclined to vote no. So I suspect Susan Collins is a no vote. We know that Rand Paul is a no vote. That pretty much means that they can afford to lose, one more vote?
Exactly. There's just one more left. And it's interesting. And so in the case of John McCain, first of all, I think with all these people, Trump holds absolutely no sway with Susan Collins, John McCain, Lisa Murkowski, certainly not Rand Paul. Right. It just shows probably why Trump is ambivalent, is that he knows that he has no real, by his own doing, he has no real sway with these folks. In the case of John McCain, it's interesting. There is this idea that perhaps he's a bit more amenable to this bill than before. I don't know if it's just because he's good friends with Lindsey Graham, but when you look back at why he objected to that last go around, sort of in famously dramatic fashion on the Senate floor, he always said it really wasn't because necessarily of the contents of the bill. It was largely the process, how, there was really no public debate, how there was no real discussion of it, how they sort of used committee procedures to push it through, et cetera, et cetera. It was almost
right. It was not what's called regular order.
Yeah, and his objections to it were largely bureaucratic, or at least that was the starting argument. And all of those things are still in place this time around. Leaving the contents of the bill aside, it's still being rushed through in this fairly...
Oh, it's even worse. There's not even a CBO score.
Exactly. And so it's hard to imagine why he would switch to a yes vote if, in fact, he's going to kind of hold true to his previous contention. And so that's why now hearing that both Lindsey Graham and Bill Cassidy are trying these sort of three new changes to the health care proposal that are in reality very specific to just Lisa Murkowski. They're talking about how Alaska and Hawaii would continue to receive Obamacare premium tax credits despite them getting repealed, and the rest of the country, Medicaid per capita caps are delayed for both Alaska and Hawaii. This is, talk about like a Cornhusker kickback type of maneuver.
Except that this is, they're calling this the Alaska bribe, but it's, the Supreme Court has ruled that when you legislate in, national legislation that has specific regional discriminatory effect, and that can be positive or negative, in this case it would be positive for Alaska, that it is unconstitutional.
Yeah, this is going to be another obstacle for them as well. On the
other hand, they've got John Roberts and Neil Gorsuch on the court, so they'll probably just vote with the Republicans anyway. But pardon my interrupting, Patrick.
No, that's fine. And then lastly on this, on top of that, one of the unforeseen obstacles is actually, I think, coming from some Republican governors. There are now 5 Republican governors, and including the Alaskan Independent, who are urging the Senate to reject this effort. This is on top, of course, of the American Medical Association, the American Hospital Association, AARP. And so, this, to a certain extent, this all kind of comes down to, I think, if you're a Republican senator, sort of whether to heed to, the majority of Americans who do like the current law, or sort of kowtowing to Republican donors and voters who simply want an end to Obamacare. That seems to be the real dilemma, which is obviously popular opinion versus, this is a campaign promise that we have expended a ton of political capital on. Which one is more important to us?
Yeah, it's an interesting show to watch, unfortunately. What else is going on in the world, Patrick?
I guess more positive news for Republicans is that the plans for tax reform seem to be getting a bit more momentum for Republicans. 2 developments that are kind of helping things out. Senate Republicans are reaching a tentative deal this week that would allow for as much as $1.5 trillion in tax reductions over the next 10 years. And there's an increasing willingness within Republican ranks to embrace some of these estimates of how much the economic growth of their tax plan would create, i.e. trickle-down economics. On top of that, I think to help sweeten the pot, the White House is going to, I think, soften some of its tough rhetoric on trade, talking about withdrawing from NAFTA or, investigating Chinese steel dumping, all these real these thorny issues on trade. I think the White House is signaling that they will relax some of their demands on those in order to try to make sure that tax reform can, in fact, get out.
And but we still don't. There's still, the legislation literally is not yet written, right?
That's right. I think that the safe assumption now is that that obviously the legislation that you will see most likely come out will be a significant tax cut for corporations, small businesses, and individuals making less than $150,000 a year.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. Patrick Gavin with Talk Media News, brought to you by Loving What You Do, Ellen Ratner's new book, and goatsfortheoldgoat.com. Patrick, thanks so much.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Good talking with you today. We'll be back with more of Anything Goes Friday right after this.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com. Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com. Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242 or visit tomsbeets.com.
In these times of great peril, we've got Kim Jong-un calling Donald Trump a crazy old man, and Donald Trump calling Kim whatever he's calling him. And this is more than ever, frankly, more than any time. I was going to say more than any time in my lifetime. I think that maybe during the civil rights and Vietnam era, it was also really important to be informed and to be politically active. And frankly, throughout all of my lifetime, it's been important to be informed and politically active. But we just got another study yesterday showing that if we don't do anything about global climate change, there may not be any human beings left on planet Earth 73 years from now, in 2100, number one. And number two, you've got, all these risks of war. I mean, Trump is like, at the same time that he's threatening to pull out of the deal with Iran, he's implicitly saying to North Korea, "Oh, you could make a deal with us." It's like, you better make a deal with us. And they're like, "Oh, we can trust you? Really? Is that what you just showed us?" So this is a really, really urgent time to have a reasonable and thoughtful conversation about these real issues. And instead, what we're getting in our corporate media is drama in sports. It's who's up, who's down, who's upset. Which of the Republicans is the most upset about, having to vote for Graham Cassidy or something like that? That's not news. Free Speech TV provides you with real information. There has to be a value to that. I'm starting to get quite concerned about how we're raising money like this. I mean, in that we only hit $8,000 yesterday, and we needed to be really at a minimum of $10,000 a day every day. And last week we were at like $2,000, $1,000 a day. So we're way behind and really need your help. Free Speech TV is, you could probably make this ad for me. It's Free Speech TV is an extraordinary television network that provides great value. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and help keep this network on the air. Keep this network going. With a gift of $80, you'll get a Free Speech TV water bottle and the Stamp Stampede stamp from Ben Cohen's, of Ben and Jerry from the Stamp Stampede folks. The water bottle is really great too, by the way. With a $120 gift, or $10 a month for a year, you get Mike Papantonio's book, Law and Vengeance, this new novel that he just literally was just published. With $20 a month, or $240 for the year, you get Mike Papantonio's book, Law and Vengeance, plus They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer. These books are, these are some of the just best books out there, and great gifts, by the way. With a $360 gift, or $30 a month for a year, you get Mike Papantonio's book, Law and Vengeance. You get They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer. And you get, and of course, the water bottle and the Stamp Stampede stamp. And you will get a copy of my book, Unequal Protection. With $480 gift, or $40 a month for a year, you get the water bottle and stamp. You get Law and Vengeance by Mike Papantonio. You get They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer. You get Unequal Protection by me. and you get Democracy in Chains by Nancy MacLean, which is a brilliant book that analyzes and breaks down and describes in rather extraordinary detail, rather breathtaking detail, how a hardcore, essentially fascistic right made up of people who traditionally were not political. They were the billionaire class, you would refer to them as, or the mercantile class. Not classic mercantilists, but the big CEOs. Let's call them the CEO class. How they basically got together and conspired not just to seize control of the Republican Party, or not just to seize control of the dialogue and narrative in our media and everywhere else, but to corrupt our democracy itself, to insinuate, right-wingers, fascists, arguably, in the old sense of the word, the merger of corporate and state interests, to insert fascists into the federal courts, which they're doing right now like, there's no tomorrow. Full tilt boogie. Mitch McConnell's doing this. Is completely flying under the radar. How they're taking over our universities, how they're taking over they're trying to infiltrate our public schools. They're getting their people elected to everything from school boards to city governments to state governments to federal. And there's a plan or an enormous amount of money behind this. So it's an amazing book. And with a $1,000 gift, come to DC or Portland, and we'll have lunch. So give them a call now, 877-378-8669. Please, this is really important. Please call now if you haven't already. Thank you.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. The breaking news is that John McCain has just come out and said no to the Graham Cassidy, Heller-Johnson bill. And I think it's important to keep the Heller-Johnson in there, because Dean Heller of Nevada and Ron Johnson of Wisconsin are both running for re-election, and they both put their names on this bill. It's Lindsey Graham, and that's the whole thing, right? And Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, and Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, and then Johnson and whatnot. And this now that McCain has said no, and just a few hours ago, Susan Collins on television said she's inclined to vote no, which Susan Collins is a rather underspoken or understated person, right? She's a soft-spoken, she's a very competent and tough legislator, but her public persona is not, the fire-breathing, angry thing. She's really one of these, a statesperson, right? Not one I always agree with, but probably one of the few left in the Republican Party. So you got Rand Paul, who opposes it because it doesn't just destroy all health care for everybody. Rand Paul doesn't think that anybody in America should have health care if the government makes it better or provides it. He thinks that everyone should have to, quote, rely on themselves. That's the libertarian religion, right? I mean, that's the religion that he was born into, and it's the religion that he's continuing to follow. So you've got him. He hates it from the right. And now Susan Collins and John McCain, if that holds, this bill is not going to pass. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't continue to call, because we don't have a definite no from Susan Collins. Maybe the thing to do would be to tweet Susan Collins and John McCain and say, thank you for opposing this disaster of a piece of legislation. Thank you for that. I wanted to talk about North Korea a little bit, too, and then I'll pick up your calls. It being Anything Goes Friday. But the North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un,
issued a statement in response to Donald Trump's UN speech in which he called him Rocket Man and said that he was on a suicide mission. I talked about this, I think it was day before yesterday, at some length about the idea that North Korea is not evangelical, whereas the old Soviet communists were aggressively evangelical, turned the entire world into us. Nazis, the Nazism, was extremely evangelical. The Americanism is extremely evangelical. Many of these, and this is just, political evangelism. But North Korea has basically just been saying, leave us alone and let us be a functioning country. So, there is one school of thought that says that Kim is a crazy man who wants to start a war. I don't believe that. I don't subscribe to that. Why would he want to do that? He's living a life of luxury. He's got all this wealth and power. He doesn't want his country to be leveled. The destruction of North Korea during the Korean War in the around 1950 was unbelievable. It was just Pyongyang, the capital city, was more than 90% destroyed. It was just extraordinary. And he doesn't want to go back to that. He doesn't want that. What he's trying to do is prevent his country from being Iraq. This all goes back to George W. Bush and that stupid speech that David Frum wrote for him in which he called North Korea, Iran, and Iraq the axis of evil. And, Iraq, Saddam Hussein, he said, hey, I'm not evil. Bring in your inspectors. Send in Hans Blix. Everything's fine. I got no weapons of mass destruction. It's all good. We're going to be a nice neighbor. And, of course, we killed him. And so Iran and North Korea looking at that said, well, wait a minute. We're not going to let that happen to us. And we got to get a nuke. And so we've got now this deal with Iran to freeze their nuke. And North Korea, of course, is building their nuke. But I think it's important that we actually listen to what Kim Jong-un has to say. And I realize that kind of thoughtful analysis of what's going on in the world is not popular generally in American journalism or American popular media, that it's people would much rather make fun of Kim or ridicule him or whatever. But there's some serious stuff here. And so I just wanted to share with you the actual speech. That Kim Jong-un wrote or spoke. This is just so you know, right? Because the media is not going to tell you. He said, the speech made by the U.S. president in his maiden address on the UN arena in the prevailing serious circumstances in which the situation in the Korean peninsula has been rendered tense as never before and is inching closer to a touch-and-go state, is arousing worldwide concern. Shaping the general idea of what he would say, I expected, now keep in mind, this is Kim Jong-un talking about Donald Trump's speech at the UN. Shaping the general idea of what he would say, I expected he would make stereotyped, prepared remarks a little different from what he used to utter in his office on the spur of the moment, as he had to speak on the world's biggest official diplomatic stage. But far from making remarks of any persuasive power that could be viewed to be helpful by diffusing tension, he made unprecedented, rude nonsense no one has ever heard from any of his predecessors. A frightened dog barks louder. I would like to advise Trump to exercise prudence in selecting words and to be considerate of whom he speaks to when making a speech in front of the world. See, as I keep saying, what they want is safety and respect, essentially. Back to Kim. Back to what Kim had to say. The mentally deranged behavior of the U.S. president openly expressing on the UN arena the unethical will to, quote, totally destroy a sovereign state, beyond the boundary of threats of regime change or overturn of social system, makes even those with normal thinking faculty think about discretion and composure. His remarks remind me of such words as political layman and political heretic, which were in vogue in reference to Trump during his presidential election campaign, After taking office, though, Trump has rendered the world restless through threats and blackmail against all countries of the world. He is unfit to hold the prerogative of supreme command of a country, and he is surely a rogue and a gangster, fond of playing with fire rather than a politician. His remarks, which describe the U.S. option through straightforward expression of his will, have convinced me, rather than frightening or stopping me, that the path I chose is correct and that it is the one I will have to follow to the last. Now that Trump has denied the existence of and insulted me and my country, keep in mind, Trump did not say Kim Jong-un, he said Rocket Man. Now that Trump has denied the existence of and insulted me and my country in front of the eyes of the world and made the most ferocious declaration of a war in history, that he would destroy the DPRK, North Korea, we will consider with seriousness exercising of a corresponding highest level of hardline countermeasure, the highest level of hardline countermeasure in history. Action is the best option in treating a dotard who, hard of hearing, is uttering only what he wants to say. As a man representing North Korea and on behalf of the dignity and honor of my state and people and of my own, I will make the man holding the prerogative of the supreme command of the U.S. pay dearly for his speech calling for totally destroying my country. This is not a rhetorical expression loved by Trump. I am now thinking hard about what response he could have expected when he allowed such eccentric words to trip off his tongue. Whatever Trump might have expected, he will face results beyond his expectation. I will surely and definitely tame.
This
hang on just a second.
Is the Thom Hartmann Program.
The last sentence from King John, I will surely and definitely tame the mentally deranged U.S. dotard with fire. And welcome back. Keith in Landrum, South Carolina. Hey, Keith. Oh, hang on just a second here, Keith. Let me try this again. There we go. Hey, Keith, what's on your mind?
Yeah. Medically speaking, how much does it cost to advertise on the cable networks when they're doing the Medicare Advantage stuff? You have.
I don't know. I've never bought an ad. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, for all the millions that they're spending, how come it is that we can give corporate subsidies to the insurance companies, but we can't afford $133 million to advertise ACA?
Yeah. Well, it's not that the Trump administration is saying that they can't afford to advertise that the open enrollment period begins, next month for the Affordable Care Act, or, in November, I guess it is. It's not that they're saying we can't afford it. It's that they're saying they're not even going to take the money that Congress appropriated. They just don't, they just don't want to do it. They're laying off the navigators, the people who help you sign up all over the country. They're trying to sabotage Obamacare. They're doing everything they can to sabotage it. And the irony of this is that if they destroy Obamacare, and they offer no alternative, then the alternative that a lot of people increasingly are going to is single-payer health insurance. Keith?
Oh, I agree.
Yeah. So we'll see how this plays out, but I think that the Republicans have been overplaying their hand for some time now, in large part because they didn't expect to have the power they have right now as a result of the last election, and
we'll. The best way to show the government doesn't work is to defund it.
Yeah, and that's been a Republican trick forever. Defund or screw up a program and then stand around and complain about how it doesn't work and then privatize it. And they've done this with everything from the military mess halls to our interstate freeways. I mean, it's just terrible. Keith, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. Mark in Schenectady, New York. Hey, Mark, what's up?
Hi, Tom. It's a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you.
The reason we need free speech TV is because in my area at one time, one of the oldest stations in the country was, and I will give the call letters WGY, who used to be a reliable not conservative, not liberal type of a station. It was just a normal, everyday radio station. It's turned into a far right wing, I call it wacko station. That and it's become the norm in my area, and I'm in a blue state. And
yeah, and it's not just Schenectady, New York, Mark. I grew up in Michigan, and WJR out of Detroit throws a signal across the entire state. I grew up with J.P. McCarthy, who was a very thoughtful morning host, talk show host. He was not a crazy. Now it's all right-wing crazy all the time. WSB in Atlanta, these three-letter call stations. These are the iconic, high-power stations from the 20s and 30s, and it's amazing. So, Mark, thanks for the call. I'm sorry we're hitting the break here, but I agree with you. I am very concerned about the media landscape in America. This is not a recent thing. This goes back to the Powell memo in 1971, where Lewis Powell, just before Nixon put him on the Supreme Court, said basically, we have to take over the media. They have done it. We'll be back.
On April 15th.
Hi, I'm Valerie with Free Speech TV. We're proud to provide you with independent, unfiltered news and documentaries. And as our valued viewer, you can help us continue bringing Free Speech TV well into the future. Join our Pearly Gate Rebels, our planned giving program. Your gift of any size will help ensure democracy endures through an informed citizenry. You can donate property, money, or assets. It's easy. My spouse and I are proud Pearly Gate Rebels. We're doing our part to ensure that Free Speech TV will be here to deliver thought-provoking news and information well into the future. Join us. Call 877-378-8669 or email me at valerie@freespeech.org. Rebel against media owned by billionaires and become one of our Pearly Gate Rebels today.
What a day, what a time. We're going to our daughter's wedding rehearsal this afternoon. I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to be fascinating. We're having a great time with family here in Portland, and it's just superlative. Anyhow, Anything Goes Friday. Linda, Deerfield Beach, Florida. Hey, Linda, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Thanks for taking my my call. I'm climbing out of the bush here, as we say here in Florida, after a hurricane.
Oh, my.
What I wanted to talk to you about was you always said get up and get active, and we've done that here in Florida. We notified all our carriers and let our carriers know to call their congressmen, what's at stake, to call their families, to call everybody, because we could lose our insurance. It's no longer employer mandated, and they pay 85% and we pay 15%. They can very well say, our business cost, they're always saying they're broke. Well, what's the first thing they're going to go after? They're going to go after your health care. It just makes sense.
Right.
So everybody out there within listening, post a note on your time card, put it up, put the Graham Casey bill up there, and tell your senators to vote against this. This is a bad deal for everybody across the board. That's just what I wanted to share with you.
Very well said, Linda, and I completely agree. It looks like it may well be going down in defeat. We'll see. But I think that the reality, the problem is that they couldn't do it fast enough to basically, BS us through it. So they have to actually deal with actual news agencies actually reporting what's the actual consequence of this bill going to be. They thought they could hide it by not asking the Congressional Budget Office to score it. No, you can't hide that. It's, this is the upside of social media, I suppose. Linda, thank you for the call. Bill in Milton, Delaware. Hey, Bill, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, hi, Tom. Long-time listener, first-time caller. I wanted to give you a call to respond to that guy that called last hour about public law 85-426 about the Civil War or the Confederate memorials being removed.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What do you know about it?
I have that right in front of me, and I remember it was like right after Charlottesville when the big discussion started again about the Confederate memorials, and there was some talking points being circulated about this law in the right wing, and they claimed that it gave the Confederate veterans the equal status to Union veterans, which actually it does, but not for the reasons that they want everybody to think. They were trying to make it out like, well, this absolved all the Confederate veterans of being traitors to the Union, or traitors to the United States, and so forth. And the section that the guy, let me back up just a second. Sorry, the law itself actually is about pensions for military widows. And the section that the guy was referring to, Section 410, doesn't say anything about Confederate statues or memorials or anything like that. It's all of 2 sentences long. It says, the administrator shall pay to each person who served in the military or naval forces of the Confederate States of America during the Civil War a monthly pension in the same amounts and subject to the same conditions as would have been applicable to such person under the laws in effect on December 31st, 1957, if his service in such forces had been service in the military or naval service of the United States. And then Section 2 is just one more sentence that says it would be effective the first day of the second calendar month following its enactment. Well, the funny thing about that is that the last Confederate veteran died in the early 50s. So I'm no legal expert or anything, but reading that section in light of what comes before it in this law says to me that they were giving the Confederate veterans the same legal status as Union veterans for the purpose of any of their surviving widows collecting a military pension. That's all that law is about. It had nothing to do with anything else.
Yeah. Well, it makes perfect sense. And the other thing that history tends not to record as vividly as perhaps it should, and again, I offer this with the caveat that I am not a scholar of the Civil War. I know the Revolutionary War quite well, but that's my favorite period of American history, and the FDR era, the New Deal. But my understanding is that after the Civil War soldiers, people who took up arms against the Union, against the United States, were given an opportunity to renounce their participation in the Civil War. Robert E. Lee famously did that. He renounced and apologized for his behavior and was, given a job essentially in exchange for that. And so I'm guessing that most of those widows and soldiers had renounced the cause that they fought for and the treason that they had committed, and which is a double reason why there shouldn't be a statue for them. It wasn't, like they were, noble, whatever. I mean, it's interesting. Bill, thank you for that. Usually when there's like, oh, this particular law, this, and it's been circulating in the right-wing memosphere, there is typically some, we're only telling you 60% of the story. And thank you so much for digging it out and sharing the details with me and with our listeners. I appreciate it. Bill, thank you.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It's Anything Goes Friday. More of your calls after the break here at the bottom of the hour.
In these times of great peril, we've got Kim Jong-un calling Donald Trump a crazy old man, and Donald Trump calling Kim whatever he's calling him. And this is more than ever, frankly, more than any time. I was going to say more than any time in my lifetime. I think that maybe during the civil rights and Vietnam era, it was also really important to be informed and to be politically active. And frankly, throughout all of my lifetime, it's been important to be informed and politically active. But we just got another study yesterday showing that if we don't do anything about global climate change, there may not be any human beings left on planet Earth 73 years from now, in 2100, number one. And number two, you've got, all these risks of war. I mean, Trump is like, at the same time that he's threatening to pull out of the deal with Iran, he's implicitly saying to North Korea, oh, you could make a deal with us. It's like, you better make a deal with us. And they're like, oh, we can trust you? Really? Is that what you just showed us? So this is a really, really urgent time to have a reasonable and thoughtful conversation about these real issues. And instead, what we're getting in our corporate media is drama and sports. It's who's up, who's down, who's upset. Which of the Republicans is the most upset about, having to vote for Graham Cassidy or something like that? That's not news. Free Speech TV provides you with real information. There has to be a value to that. I'm starting to get quite concerned about how we're raising money like this. I mean, in that we only hit $8,000 yesterday, and we needed to be really at a minimum of $10,000 a day every day. And last week we were at like $2,000, $1,000 a day. So we're way behind, and really need your help. Free Speech TV is. You could probably make this ad for me. It's Free Speech TV is an extraordinary television network that provides great value. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and help keep this network on the air. Keep this network going. With a gift of $80, you'll get a Free Speech TV water bottle and the Stamp Stampede stamp from Ben Cohen's, of Ben and Jerry from the Stamp Stampede folks. The water bottle is really great too, by the way. With a $120 gift, or $10 a month for a year, you get Mike Papantonio's book, Law and Vengeance, this new novel that he just literally was just published. With $20 a month, or $240 for the year, you get Mike Papantonio's book, Law and Vengeance, plus They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer. These books are, these are some of the just best books out there, and great gifts, by the way. With a $360 gift, or $30 a month for a year, you get Mike Papantonio's book, Law and Vengeance. You get They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer, and you get, and of course, the water bottle and the Stamp Stampede stamp. And you will get a copy of my book, Unequal Protection. With $480 gift, or $40 a month for a year, you get the water bottle and stamp. You get Law and Vengeance by Mike Papantonio. You get They Thought They Were Free by Milton Mayer. You get Unequal Protection by me. And you get Democracy in Chains by Nancy MacLean, which is a brilliant book that analyzes and breaks down and describes in rather extraordinary detail, rather breathtaking detail, how a hardcore, essentially fascistic right made up of people who traditionally were not political. They were the billionaire class, you would refer to them as, or the mercantile class. Not classic mercantilists, but the big CEOs. Let's call them the CEO class. How they basically got together and conspired not just to seize control of the Republican Party, or not just to seize control of the dialogue and narrative in our media and everywhere else, but to corrupt our democracy itself, to insinuate, right-wingers, fascists, arguably, in the old sense of the word, the merger of corporate and state interests, to insert fascists into the federal courts, which they're doing right now, like, there's no tomorrow. Full tilt boogie. Mitch McConnell's doing this. Is completely flying under the radar. How they're taking over our universities, how they're taking over they're trying to infiltrate our public schools. They're getting their people elected to everything from school boards to city governments to state governments to federal. And there's a plan or an enormous amount of money behind this, so it's an amazing book. And with a $1,000 gift, come to D.C. or Portland, and we'll have lunch. So give them a call now, 877-378-8669. Please, this is really important. Please call now if you haven't already. Thank you. This is fascinating. I'm reading this piece in Think Progress right now about John McCain. It's by Addie Baird, and it's titled, "Don't Get Too Excited About McCain. The September 30 deadline for Trump care is just a hoax." Well, it's sort of. There actually is this September 30th deadline if they want to pass this via budget reconciliation. But according to this article, I thought they had to wait until the next Congress. Apparently, they only have to wait until the next year. So in January, they can just pull this out and do it all over again. They just have to wait 3 months. And, if that's the case, and I, have every reason to believe that Addie Baird has done his or her homework and has it right, then, and what John McCain is saying is that he likes the bill, he just doesn't like the lack of regular order. And regular order is simply, you hold hearings in committee. The committee then reports the bill out with a recommendation to vote to, for it to pass, or they don't put it out because it didn't pass the committee. And then it goes to the floor and you have debate on it and everybody has a chance to have a say and then they have a vote. Right? That's regular order. And instead what they're doing is no committee hearings, no public hearings, no debate or minimal debate, if any, among members. And no filibuster allowed. It's, simple, straight up or down vote. And John McCain is saying he objects to that process. Well, if his objection is to the process, then they could bring this back out in January and do it through regular order and maybe get it passed. I mean, who knows? So this is not yet a victory. And it is important, I think, for all of us at this point to take this very seriously. There are a number of billionaires in this country who are very offended by the fact that they have to pay hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars a year in taxes on their billions in order to help support the health care of average working people in America. These billionaires hate that. They think it's wrong. They think it's morally wrong. They think that they're turning us into a nation of parasites. Many of these billionaires, of course, inherited their money, but still, they don't think that we should have access to anything from the government because that makes us dependent on the government. And so, and they're the ones who are funding and thus own many, if not most, or even all of these Republican politicians. And it's not even just at the federal level. It's at the state level it's happening as well. And don't give up. Don't stop calling. Just because the news just broke that John McCain is saying no. Well, Susan Collins hasn't said a definite no, but even that, even if they kill it now, even if this vote next week never even happens because Mitch McConnell can't whip the votes together, even if all that happens, we can't say, oh, safe. Because as long as Republicans are in charge, they can drag this thing back out in January. And you can bet your bottom dollar they will. So the stakes are high. The stakes are definitely high. Anyhow, it's Anything Goes Friday. Your calls here. Jonathan in Portland, Oregon. Hey, Jonathan, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. How you doing? Congratulations on your daughter's wedding.
Thank you. What's up?
I am one of Multnomah County's new precinct committee people, thanks to you.
Oh, good on you.
Yeah. So I'm very excited about that. And you had a fellow on your show the other day who brought up it was a study published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2013 about Medicare and the effects of Medicare on the healthcare system. And he was using it as evidence to show that Medicare was a failure. And I just want to, educate people a little bit about that because it actually said, well, it actually was very small, but it actually said the opposite. It actually reduced rates of depression by 30%. It certainly increased rates of preventative care, like smears and mammographies. But by the study's own admission, they actually couldn't detect any other changes in health simply because the people that were in the study were healthy. They had just had too few people, even though there were, I guess, about 20,000 people they looked at as a randomized study, so half were in Medicaid and half weren't. But the idea that there has to be a study anyway to validate socialized medicine. I lived in Stockholm for 2 years, and in Sweden there's no one on the streets and there's no one having to go with hat in hand to go to the doctor. I mean, I went to the doctor and you don't pay anything. You just walk in and walk out, and that's it.
Right. There's no tin can in the 7-Eleven with a picture of some kid who needs a liver transplant.
No. And their stock market's booming, and they have a lot of wealthy people, and their standard of living is very high. And the thing is, look, there are only, say, 7, 8, 9 million people living in Sweden. The Nordic countries have very low populations, but, they all have to pull together, and they do very high literacy rates, 90% literacy rates, almost 100 actually. And just quickly about the Confederate, this sort of strange meme that's going on about the Confederate pensions, which I hear on Lars Larson, and it's sort of a bizarre thing. There is no federal pension for Confederates. You can just go to the VA website, and it'll show that. The Confederate pensions were administered by the states, and it was actually very difficult to get a pension if you were a Confederate soldier. And in order to do that, you actually had to buy into the idea of the lost cause. You had to have 2 people who would sign off and say that you were doing your duty as a good soldier and that you still believed in the lost cause. It was pretty bizarre. And just to be clear, Lee resigned his commission as a colonel. So he was not fighting in the U.S. Army. I mean, he's not a veteran. And, there is no Southern heritage. I mean, the Southern heritage is the U.S. citizenship that Lincoln and Johnson magnanimously gave back to them when they issued their pardons in 1883. I think it was 1883 and 1885. So that's kind of what I have to say about that.
Okay. Well, Jonathan, you're more well informed on that than I am. I can't add to it, but thank you for the information. It continually amazes me how I think we have some of the smartest listeners in all of radio on this show. And super congratulations on becoming a precinct committee person. That is wonderful, Jonathan. I'm so proud of you. Thanks a lot for the call. You're welcome. George in Reseda, California. Hey, George, what's up?
Good afternoon, sir. Just quickly, the ACA, they're cutting the funding for it, for the advertising. Why don't the Dems get together and put up some PSAs? I thought we had the right to that access on air for PSAs.
The Democratic Party could buy advertising on television telling people that they can sign up for the Affordable Care Act, but they would be using money that they would have to otherwise use for the support of candidates for political office. And my guess would be that the math that they're doing, the equation that they're doing, is that it's better for the Democratic Party to have more elected Democrats than it is to help promote the Affordable Care Act. It's the crime, the perfidy here is on the part of the Republicans, or specifically the Trump administration, and their not just willingness and desire, but they're actually doing it, refusing to take the money that Congress appropriated to help people sign up for the Affordable Care Act, or even to inform people that there is an eligibility period, that if you're going to sign up, you can only do it during a 2-month period every year. And this is, true of most kinds of insurance. It's how the insurance industry kind of evens out their years and that sort of thing. But they're trying to stick it to us. That's what the Trump administration is doing. George, thanks for the call. Well said. Daryl in Buffalo, South Carolina. Hey, Daryl, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Nice to speak to you. Congratulations on your daughter's wedding. And just wanted to make a quick comment. I'd heard a mention about Bernie Sanders and town hall meeting with, Graham and Cassidy, but I'd heard last night there's going to actually be a debate on CNN, I think Tuesday night, maybe Monday night, between Bernie Sanders and Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota, or the other one would be from Minnesota, debating Bernie Sanders and Cassidy on the health care. And
yeah, I think it's going to be Graham and Cassidy versus Bernie, and I'm not sure if it's going to be Amy Klobuchar or Al Franken, or if it's just going to be Bernie. But, debate is a very dangerous word when you're talking about these staged so-called town halls. The last one that CNN did, and MSNBC does them from time to time. They do them with Bernie and with others. They're carefully staged managed,
Bernie won't be alone, and I did hear the name of Amy. I think it is Klobuchar.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, Amy Klobuchar is wonderful. She is a great member of Congress and a really decent human being. I've met her. I've met her family. I've been in her home, in fact. She's great. So if she's the one, and Al Franken, of course, Al, my old colleague from Air America days. If it's Al Franken, this should be a no-brainer, because the Republicans got nothing. They got smoke and mirrors and lies. So it should be interesting. Daryl, thanks a lot for the call. It's we're just gonna have to watch it or listen to it or read the newspaper the next day and see what was said. But again, just because John McCain just came out and said no does not mean, A, that this particular piece of legislation is dead, although it strongly suggests that. But it definitely doesn't mean that these Republicans are not going to try and do this again in January.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Back with more of your calls on Anything Goes Friday here on the Thom Hartmann Program, right after this. And welcome back. Pete in Tyler, Texas. Hey, Pete, thanks for watching Free Speech on the Dish Network. What's on your mind?
I got a question, Tom. If a president is impeached by the Congress and tried by the Senate, how many votes does it take in the Senate to convict? Is it 51 or 60 or 66?
It's 2/3.
2/3. So
in both houses, in both bodies.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Or maybe it's 2/3 plus 1. I'm not sure, but it has to be that supermajority. Mike in Richmond, Illinois. Hey, Mike, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Mike, is it true you used to be a psychotherapist?
I was on the roster of psychotherapists for the state of Vermont. I used to run a community for abused kids, so and I've written some books on the topics, but I don't put myself out as some kind of great shrink or anything like that, Mike.
Okay, yeah, my kid was diagnosed with deficit in auditory comprehension, but now he's 21, and then he dropped out of community college, so they said he was too slow, so now all he does is play video games, but my neighbor said that he could be an autism spectrum, and then someone asked me if he had Asperger's syndrome by a social worker. But he was diagnosed by a school psychologist. So you think I should get a full evaluation by a psychotherapist? And what's the difference between a school psychologist?
First of all, I can't give you any specific advice, Mike. The state licensing laws and whatnot, prevent me from giving you specific advice. I can speak in generalities. Secondly, in the psychology world, there is a pecking order. I'm at the very bottom, or I was when I was on the Vermont roster. Psychotherapists are at the bottom. You can be a psychotherapist. In some states, it requires a master's degree. In some states, a bachelor's degree. In some states, you can even do it with life experience, sort of thing, and through your job, essentially, which is what I did in Vermont. The next step up is a licensed clinical psychologist. That requires a PhD, and it requires the approval of the American Psychological Association. You have to pass their boards, their exams, and then you have to be licensed by your state. And then the next step up from that in terms of income and hierarchy
is psychiatrist, and a psychiatrist is a person who is an MD and can prescribe drugs, whereas psychologists and psychotherapists can't. And typically psychiatrists don't do therapy. They don't sit and talk to you for an hour. They may meet with you for 15 minutes and say, do a medication check, basically. They pass out pills. Now, it's not all of them, but these are the generalities. So first of all. Secondly, you're going to find, and because of that, there are certain biases intrinsic in these things. You'll find that psychologists and psychotherapists are going to be less enthusiastic about recommending pharmaceuticals, for example, because they can't write the prescriptions for them, whereas psychiatrists, MDs, are going to typically use drugs as their first line of response and perhaps do therapy or refer you to a therapist. There are people who are called educational testing specialists, Mike, and some of them have PhDs, some of them have master's degrees. In some states they're licensed, in some states they're not. But generally speaking, if somebody has a child or even an adult child who is dealing with issues like ADD and where there's some concern that they may be somewhere on the autism spectrum, I would start with an educational testing specialist and just get a really good comprehensive analysis of what's going on. Welcome back. Oh, our thank yous for the day. Thanks so much to our show director, Louise Hartman, to our executive producer, Sean Taylor, to our producers, Nate Atwell, Chris Mendelis, and Troy Miller, to our writer-researcher, Nate Sweet, to our webmasters, Nigel Peacock and Jamie Holly, to our business manager, Ron Hartenbaum, to everyone at our syndicators, Digital Media, Pacifica Radio, Sirius XM Satellite Radio, Cable Radio Network, Free Speech TV on Dish Network, DirecTV, and all the cable providers who carry our show, including Manhattan Neighborhood Networks and every home in Manhattan, and all the others across the country, all the great folks on Free Speech TV, to the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn, to Netroots Radio, to our newsletter editor, Sue Nethercutt, and the folks at our chat room, to Alan Ratner, Victoria Jones, Bob Ney, and everyone at Talk Media News, Jay Goodman-Tamboli for tech support, to our affiliates, our sponsors, and to you for supporting our program. It is so appreciated. Thank you so much. Jim in Lombard, Illinois. Hey, Jim, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I just got a statement. I want to say this. The four horsemen of the apocalypse are becoming stronger and more formidable. The foolishness must end. The human race should form an alliance and battle these enemies. Remember the true dissident. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Jim. Good statement. Thank you. Ralph in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Hey, Ralph, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, I was just listening to you, and I never heard you mention anything about how cheap Medicare is if you're working. It only comes out to $142 for every $10,000 that you make. I think if we raise it to $300 for every $10,000, I think we can really have Medicare for all. I mean, I never heard anything.
Well, and it's also capped out. If you're on Medicare, and I think it goes as high as 300 and something per month. I could be wrong on that. I'm not. My income is not in those stratospheric levels. But the cost of Medicare does go up as your income goes up, but it's not $100 per 10,000. It's far more gradual than that. But anyhow, what was your point, Ralph?
The point is, I think the $142 for every $10,000 you make is pretty reasonable. Mm-hmm. Like, raise it, we can do a lot, and then Medicare for all or something.
Yeah, but that would mean that somebody making $100,000 a year would be paying, $14,000, and they don't. Somebody making $100,000 a year is going to be paying, between $250 and $300 a month on Medicare. But I understand what you're saying, that it should be graduated, it should be progressive, essentially, and it is to a certain extent. And if somebody making more than $300,000 or $400,000 or $500,000 a year, it should go up considerably. And I don't think it does, but that's a question for Alex Lawson. He knows this stuff inside and out, and I'm only familiar with it as a consumer of Medicare. So, Ralph, thank you for the call. Excellent point. Rudy in Atlanta, Georgia. Hey, Rudy, what's on your mind?
Hey, Tom, so good to hear your voice. I'm like a fish out of water when I don't hear your voice during the week, man. So I just called to tell you.
Well, thank you, Rudy.
Thank you. We spoke probably 6 months prior to the election, 2016, and I told you that white America was at a crossroads. And you know, this is a cancer. The hatred is a cancer in this country, and it's no accident that Trump is president. I really believe that this needed to happen. In order for any illness to be healed, it has to be exposed. It has to be diagnosed. I challenge everyone to take a step back and look at our lives and just try to find a way to shine your light. Try to shine a positive light. Love. I mean, Tom. I mean, we have a cancer in this country, and if we don't start to talk to each other, let each other know that we are alive, this country's going to be destroyed. So I mean,
we're already being torn apart, Rudy. Rudy, if I could make one slight recalibration on your language and get your feedback on it. You were talking about hate in America, and I agree. You know, there's these hate groups are proliferating and all that sort of thing. But I always viewed hate. You know, the opposite of hate is not love. The opposite of hate is apathy, just like the opposite of love is apathy. And I've always viewed hate as basically something that grows out of fear. And so where comes the fear? The fear, at least in the white community, in my opinion, you know, having grown up as a white guy in this country for 66 years now, is grounded in this religion and pseudoscience of white supremacy. Not just white privilege, but white supremacy, the idea that white people, you know, were God ordained or DNA ordained or whatever to run everything and be in charge of everything. And as white people start seeing that power slip away from them, the stories that they've been told about how evil or incompetent or dumb or whatever people of color are causing them to be fearful. So I think the first thing that we need to do is shatter this myth of white supremacy. You know, and as a white guy, I would say to other white people, just imagine you woke up one morning and looked in the mirror and suddenly you're African American. Consider that. Step into that for a minute. Be that for a minute and think about how your life is going to be different and think about how your experiences are going to be different. And most of all, realize that you still have the same emotions, you still have the same intellect, you still have the same passions, you still have the same loves and fears and everything else. We're all just friggin' humans here. And that's what we've got to blow up. Does that make sense, Rudy?
It makes a lot of sense, Tom. I love you. Have a good...
Okay, thanks a lot, Rudy. Yeah, you have a great weekend, too. Thanks so much for the call, and thanks for listening to us on Sirius. Thank you all for being with us. It's been a great week. I'll be back in Washington, D.C. in our studio on Monday, and I'll see you then. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires you. Get out there, get active, tag, you're it. We'll see you on Monday.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com. Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com. Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242 or visit tomsbeets.com.